Oh, sorry, I thought you were saying with. Okay. Thank you very much to the community for your patience. We are now ready to move on to agenda item 3, which is to consider a tentative map, architectural and site approval, and tree removal permit for the construction of a 51-unit townhome condominium development on housing element priority housing sites 25 through 28 with SummerHill Homes. The public hearing is now open, and do we have a staff report?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just want to have a few comments on this. You had just touched on it, though, that for people in attendance, this is a housing element priority housing site. We know there is a lot of community interest in this project. The site was put on the housing element in the summer of 2024. About a year later, this site had always been in a high fire hazard zone, but a year after that, in 2025, it was reclassified as a very high fire hazard zone site, which the city in July of last year adopted the updated fire maps and updated its building code so we would be compliant with the change, which originated with CAL FIRE and state law. So those, I suspect, will be some of the competing comments we get tonight. This project, unlike the last project we talked about, being a multifamily project, is subject to density bonus, SB 330, and a lot of the typical housing laws that we have seen that have placed more limitations on what discretionary bodies are able to do. So with that, I will turn the meat of the presentation over to Emmy. I do know the developer and their team are here tonight as well, and we'll have a presentation. And we also have one representative from Santa Clara County Fire and our team that prepared the CEQA document with David J. Powers. So we got quite a few people here actually in person.
Thank you very much. Excuse me, I forgot to do ex parte communications. So may we please do that disclosure now? We'll go left to right, starting with Commissioner Linskog.
I met with the developers who took me through the detailed plans.
I did not meet with the developer.
I have met with the developer multiple times, as well as the community members. Thank you.
Likewise, met with the developer, met with the community as well.
And same for me. I met with the developers and have spoken with people in the community.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Thank you again, Chair Solcheron and Commissioners. Amy Sugiyama, Planning Staff, here today now to discuss the SummerHill Homes request for a housing development project. This property is located on Linda Vista Drive. It's within the Monte Vista neighborhood and adjacent to Deep Cliff Golf Course. The property is zoned R3TH for medium-high density multifamily with townhome allowances. The site currently has 4 single-family residences, 1 on each parcel. The city received a preliminary application under Senate Bill 330 in October of 2024, which vested the project standards to those that were in place at the time that that application was submitted. Additionally, the project site was identified as a priority housing site, sites number 25 through 28, and was rezoned for medium high density housing through the city's 6th cycle housing element update. The project makes use of a number of state housing laws, including the Housing Accountability Act, which acts as a limit to the city's ability to deny or condition the project. Additionally, it stipulates that the city cannot apply non-objective standards to a housing development project. SB 330, otherwise known as the Housing Crisis Act, streamlines the permitting process, and as previously noted, it allows the applicant to lock in or vest fees and standards that are in place at the time that they submit an application. The project also makes use of the state's density bonus law, which allows for additional units, waivers, concessions, and reduced parking standards. For this project, the applicant is only proposing to make use of the allowed concessions and waivers. Finally, the city is subject to the requirements of the No Net Loss Law under Senate Bill 166, which requires that the city maintain a list of housing sites that can accommodate the required RHNA. As noted in the staff report, the city is currently unable to meet the required RHNA with the sites identified and is working to identify additional sites for housing. The housing element projected 84 units being provided on this site. The project proposes 51, fewer than the expected units. and will require that the city identify a new location for the units to meet RENA. Okay. Here you can see an overview of the project's consistency with typical development requirements. The project proposes to build at the lowest allowed density for the site. The applicant has also increased the side yard setbacks adjacent to neighboring residences and the rear setback adjacent to Deep Cliff Golf Course. Additionally, the applicant is utilizing state density bonus law waivers to address some of these requirements. These waivers will be discussed in detail later in this presentation. Okay. The project consists of 51 townhome-style condominium units spread across 10 buildings with 10 below-market rate units and 41 market-rate units. There is a mix of 3 to 6 units per building, with each building being 3 stories. The proposed units range from about 2,300 square feet to about 2,800 square feet. 50 new trees will be planted on site, and 2 existing oak trees along shared property lines will be protected in place. And then the project also includes a vesting tentative map for condominium purposes. Here you can see the proposed site layout with the 10 buildings oriented parallel to Linda Vista Drive and the site divided by Avulich Court, which is an existing public right-of-way. The proposed BMR units are identified by the red dots, and it should also be noted that each unit has a 2-car garage. Here you can see a rendering of the proposed project showing a view of the buildings from Linda Vista Drive. The project has been found to be consistent with the applicable objective standards of the city's general plan, below market rate housing manual, and municipal code. And the project includes one concession under the density bonus law to waive the requirements for BMR units to be comparable to market rate units in terms of the unit type. I'll note that concessions and waivers proposed under the density bonus law can only be denied under specific circumstances, including that they have an adverse impact on historic property, health, or safety. In addition to this concession, the applicant is also utilizing 5 density bonus waivers. For each of these waivers, the applicant has noted that imposing the standards could potentially result in the elimination of units, reduced floor areas, or substantial changes to the design of the buildings, which is not consistent with the project as proposed by the applicant. The first of the 5 waivers is to allow for a modification of the required 12-foot street side setback along Avulich Court to instead have a 3-foot 7-inch setback. The second waiver is to allow for a reduction of the required 6-foot clearance for private open space. The applicant is proposing varying dimensions, with the smallest dimension being 4.5 feet. The final 3 waivers would allow for an increase in the height of the buildings from the 30-foot maximum to a total of 40 feet 7 inches on the high end, an increase to the maximum floor area ratio from the allowed 85% to a 136% of the net lot area, and a reduction in the required size of parking spaces from 9.5 by 20 feet to 9.5 by 18.5 feet. It should also be noted that for purposes of planning, the maximum height is measured from the natural grade to the peak roof. And while not required as part of this planning entitlement, the project will be required to provide public art following project approval. At this time, the applicant is proposing to provide a public art plaza in the southern corner of the Avulich Court and Linda Vista intersection. Based on the site's characteristics, staff is recommending and the applicant has requested payment of the parkland in lieu fees consistent with the Quimby Act. The applicant is also proposing a pedestrian and bike trail connection between the project site and Stevens Creek Trail. Should it be approved, the applicant is requesting a credit towards park in lieu fees for the cost of construction to connect up to $377,000. The project was also reviewed against the city's BMR requirements, and staff found that the BMR units are generally comparable in size to the market rate units, with BMR units being an average of about 2,350 and the market rate units being about 2,700 square feet. The project has been found to qualify for the statutory exemption under the provisions of Assembly Bill 130. In the analysis for this exemption, the third-party reviewers of the city reviewed the environmental reports that are listed here and confirmed that the project would not have significant effects on the environment and meets the criteria for the statutory exemption. The exemption outlined in AB 130 also includes a number of processing timelines, which require the city to make a decision on this project by April 4th. As I previously noted, the site was included in the housing element update, which increased the allowed density in July of 2024. Following the rezoning of the site, the applicant submitted their SB 330 preliminary application, vesting the standards that were in place at that time. Approximately 4 months later, CAL FIRE hazard maps were updated, which now indicate that the project site is in the very high fire hazard severity zone. Consistent with the requirements for the AB 130 exemption, the project was reviewed under and found to be consistent with the current standards for development within very high fire hazard severity zones. The project has received a number of public inquiries and comments throughout its review. As such, in addition to the standard noticing that would typically be sent to neighbors within 300 feet, the city sent mailed notices to an over 1,000-foot radius and provided electronic notifications to those who had signed up to receive them. The majority of the public comments related to the concerns with project's density, anticipated traffic impacts, and a perceived increased risk for fire. And with that, staff recommends that you adopt the resolutions to approve the permits. This is based on the revised resolutions that were provided to you all as a desk item. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions from the commission? Commissioner Rao.
Thank you. Is it possible to project attachment 7 with the AB 130 exemption checklist?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the commission before we move on to the applicant? Okay, then I think we're ready to move on to the applicant presentation.
Oh, we were taking questions of staff?
I'm sorry, I asked. Did anyone?
Yeah, we have a
We're
question
still
and they're
waiting
pulling
for
it up. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Thank you for your patience with that. And then if I could have video share my screen. Thank you.
Thank you. If you might scroll down to the checklist. I guess we can zoom this. There we go. I guess we can zoom this. Is there any way you can zoom this?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So if you scroll down to the next page.
Okay.
All right. So there's number 5, item number 4. Can you comment on, I guess it starts on the previous page, item number 4.
Okay.
Yeah. So which of these categories does the project meet? Are we saying the existing 4 single-family residences qualified as an existing urban use?
For this infill exemption, it's pretty similar to the Class 32 categorical exemption we've had. Pretty much any urbanized area, any incorporated city is going to meet the criteria for an infill development. So this site is in a developed area. It has utilities. While it's adjacent to a golf course and single-family homes, those are development. So it would clearly meet the criteria.
Okay, so it's probably the last bullet on that page. At least 75% within a quarter mile is urban use.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Good. Thank you. If you can scroll down a little bit further. Right there. The project is consistent with the existing general plan or zoning for the site. How should we understand the overlap between density bonus waivers and consistency with the general plan when the proposed project seeks density bonus waivers? Is that for the purpose of this exemption still considered consistent with the general plan?
That's correct. Density bonus, the waivers do not take you out of, say, inconsistency with zoning or general plan. So you're looking at the project. In this case, you have a project that is coming in with the R3TH zone. It is a townhome development. It's within the 20 to 35 density range. And the density bonus waivers can't be used as a means to say it's now inconsistent with the general plan or zoning.
Okay. And is there, I don't know if Attorney Wu has any guidance on this. Is this based on staff discretion and interpretation, or is there state law that talks about how the overlap of density bonus waivers occurs with the AB 130 exemption criteria?
Yeah, I think Assistant Director Connolly accurately described the status.
Okay. So the state law itself does not speak to this, does it?
It does. Yeah, there is a stipulation specifically in AB 130 or in the Public Resources Code that states that we cannot use a waiver or concession or request thereof to say that it's no longer consistent with our general plan or zoning.
Okay. Thank you. There's the next item there. If you scroll down, I believe it talks about the fire hazard severity zone. Is there a question here on that? Yeah, there it is, number 7. So just zoning in on the fire hazard severity zone, can you comment on what the AB 130 exemption criteria is? I understand you're listing a fire mitigation strategy that suffices. Who makes that determination? Is it planning commission? Is it planning staff? Is it the fire department?
The CEQA determination is always going to be the city's determination. We're the lead agency for CEQA, so we can't transfer that away. But this is in a very high fire hazard zone, which under AB 130 is something that could disqualify you, except if you read further on that where it says within a very high fire hazard zone, this subparagraph does not apply to sites that have adopted fire hazard mitigation measures pursuant to existing building standards or state fire mitigation measures applicable to the development, which this project does. So that is where essentially if you had a project that was in a very high fire hazard zone and it was not compliant with now the current building standards that are required, say for defensible space or anti-combustible materials, then you would not be able to apply AB 130. Since this project does, it is compliant and AB 130 would be applicable.
And specifically, I think if you scroll down, it talks about how this mitigation is met. Is that on the next page?
Yes, they are correct. I think that goes to the top of the next page. So it cites
right there.
Chapter 7A of the Building Code.
And so that list that you have, which talks about the fire sprinklers within 30 feet and using fire-resistant material within 30 feet and so on, that matches the state law statutes and what would satisfy that fire hazard mitigation?
Yes, that would be with the current standards for construction in a very high fire hazard zone.
And again, who makes the determination? Is it fire or is it planning commission, planning staff?
We rely on county fire review to make that determination since they're the technical experts in this area.
Okay. And is there any written evidence submitted by fire for this hearing?
Well, we do have a representative here, and I know a memo was submitted indicating their approval of the project as designed.
So if I may, Chair, I think this section is reserved for questions from the presentation to the extent any commissioners have any. Some of these questions, I wonder whether it's more appropriate for when we get to the discussion portion of this.
Sounds good. I will hold for the questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the commission for staff? All right, I will withhold mine until after public comment. May we have the applicant presentation, please?
Good evening, Planning Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. My name is Austin Lin, Development Manager for SummerHill Homes. I'm joined tonight by Steve Bull, Vice President of Development for the project, Kevin Ebrahimi, our Senior Vice President of Development, members of our design team, and our legal counsel, Margot Bradish from Cox Castle, who will say a few words after me. We're excited to bring a thoughtfully designed housing community to West Cupertino, which will create a rare opportunity for new housing for families within walking distance of Cupertino's award-winning schools. Before getting into the details, I'd like to sincerely thank city staff for their collaboration throughout this process, in particular, Emi Sugiyama, who has been exceptional to work with. We'd also like to thank Luke Conley from the Planning Department, Jennifer Chu from the Public Works Department, as well as Matthew McKenna and Kayla Flanagan from the Santa Clara County Fire Department. Next slide, please. We are proposing to build 51 townhomes, which is the minimum number of homes required for the site. The project consists exclusively of 4-bedroom townhome units to accommodate families with floor areas ranging from 1,700 to 2,300 square feet, and each home will have a 2-car garage. All the homes will be offered for sale, and the majority will be for market rate homes, with 10 homes designated as below market rate and sold through the city's affordable housing program. In addition, the project includes 2 private amenity spaces for the residents, featuring casual outdoor seating, as well as public art. As Emmy mentioned, the Linda Vista site is designated as a priority housing site in the city's housing element. Under current zoning, the project requires a density range of 20 to 35 units per acre, which equates to a unit count range of 51 to 87 units for the 2.5-acre site. While state density bonus law could allow for up to 100 units, we are intentionally proposing the minimum allowable density of 51 units. For a brief history at the inclusion of the site into the housing element, the draft housing element originally assigned a minimum density of 30 units per acre to the site. The property owners formally objected to the 30 units per acre designation and requested the minimum density for the site be reduced to 20 units per acre, which the City Council voted to approve on September 9, 2022. The property owner requested a lower minimum density to provide a choice for a better, well-thought-out integration of the proposed development with the existing neighborhood. Next slide, please. To maintain the walkability of the neighborhood, the homes along Linda Vista Drive all have front doors facing the street with the garages hidden behind the homes. Additionally, the homes have been oriented so that the primary windows for the living areas and bedrooms face toward either Linda Vista Drive or the golf course to minimize the privacy impact to the neighbors. Next slide, please. In addition to standard fire sprinklers and non-combustible roof tiles and siding, we have worked closely with the fire department to add enhanced wildfire resiliency measures into the project's design in compliance with applicable laws and in compliance with AB 130 very high fire hazard zone requirements. First, we are creating a defensible buffer by using non-combustible landscaping within the first 5 feet around every building. For the structures themselves, all units will have fire-rated eaves and ember-resistant vents and door openings. Additionally, the homes along the perimeter of the site will have added sprinklers within all covered porches and decks and increased fire-resistant ratings for the exterior walls. Next slide, please. We submitted an SB 330 preliminary application for the project in October of 2024, hosted 2 neighborhood meetings in November of 2024, one with the immediate fence line neighbors and another with the broader neighborhood and community, and submitted our formal application in December of 2024. After the application was deemed complete in March of 2025, we worked closely with city staff and the fire department through multiple rounds of detailed reviews of the plans and technical reports. During this process, we applied the new Assembly Bill 130 CEQA exemption to the project in September of 2025. This past month, we met again with the immediate fence line neighbors and hosted another large group community meeting with the neighborhood to provide an update regarding the project. Although we are complying with the city's general plan, zoning, and objective standards, we proactively engaged with the neighborhood. Based on this input, we increased the side setbacks from 6 feet to 10 feet along the northern and southern property line, added privacy-enhancing design measures of landscaping screening hedges along the northern and southern property lines, and opaque third-floor windows where appropriate. Next slide, please. The project will provide several important public benefits for the community. First, the project will provide 51 new homes contributing to the city's RHNA obligations for the 6th housing cycle, and also gives families and aspiring first-time homebuyers a chance at homeownership in Cupertino. Second, the city designation of the project site as a priority housing site supports the city's goal of affirmably furthering fair housing. The project site is the only priority housing site within this area of the city. Third, we're proposing to designate 10 of the units as below market rate units. Finally, the project will contribute approximately $2 million in park fees, $569,000 in school fees, and a surplus of $48,000 annually to the city's general fund from estimated property tax, sales tax, and parcel transfer taxes as verified by the city's third-party consultant. Next slide, please. At this time, we would like to have Margot Bradish, our Land Use Counsel, say a few words.
Thank you, Austin. Good evening, Commissioners. We did submit a letter in advance, so I'll be brief tonight, but I did just want to present a quick framework for your consideration of the project this evening. First of all, I want to talk about timeline and then about substance. From a timing standpoint, both the Permit Streamlining Act and the Housing Accountability Act established 3 critical deadlines for your project consideration. The first was the completeness determination, which was issued by staff on March 19th, 2025. 30 days later is the determination of consistency comment deadline, which staff complied with, submitting comments on April 18th, 2025. And finally, and most importantly, is the deadline for the city to make a decision on the project, which in this case is 30 days after the completion of the AB 130 process, subject to a one-time extension, which was granted here, which brings the date to April 4th, as staff indicated, for the city to take action on the project, or it will be deemed approved by operation of law. In considering whether to approve the project, it's important to note that the Housing Accountability Act places strict limits on a city's ability to disapprove a housing project that complies with objective standards. In particular, a city can only do so if there's a preponderance of evidence, so that's more likely than not, that the project will have a specific adverse impact on health and safety, defined in the Housing Accountability Act to require a conflict with an objective written public health and safety standard. For this project, as noted in the staff report, the city does not have an objective health and safety standard related to evacuation routes, let alone any policy that the project is inconsistent with. In fact, as indicated in the staff report, the fire department confirmed that the project complies with the fire code requirements and the AB 130 requirements for the severity zone that the project is located in. As a result, as a matter of law, there is not a preponderance of evidence that the project would have a specific and adverse impact on health and safety as indicated in the Housing Accountability Act, and therefore there is not a reason consistent with the Housing Accountability Act for the city to disapprove the project. We encourage you to approve the project and provide much needed housing in your community. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Do we have any questions from the commission for the applicant? Commissioner Rao.
Yes, thank you to the applicant for your presentation. If you can talk a little bit about, you've probably done many projects out here. We've had a lot of feedback around concerns of fire. Have there been any episodes of fire around your development during or right after the development? Do you have any episodes involving fire at SummerHill Homes at the densities that we're looking at?
First, thank you for the opportunity to be here. My name is Kevin Abrahimi. I'm the Senior Vice President for SummerHill Homes. Steve Bull, he's also the Vice President for the company. So no, none of our projects that I'm aware of, I've been with the company approximately 18 years, has had any fire issues. Primarily, new construction requires much more advanced products. We typically try to do stucco as much as possible and have closed eaves, roof tiles, material that considerably reduce chances of buildings catching on fire. And just to answer your question, no, we haven't had any fires.
And that is your experience in 18 years of development, as you have seen no episodes of fire involving SummerHill Homes?
Certainly not. No, we haven't.
Okay. Are you aware of any of your peers that have And again, this is not a binding question, but just anecdotally, are you aware of projects of this type running into fire situations commonly?
I'm not aware of townhome style product like this having fire issues, but I am aware of podium projects, and our sister company does podium projects. From time to time, there's more chances of podium projects catching on fire.
Have you had any projects in very high severity fire zones?
I believe, I'm not certain, but I believe our Moraga project has, I don't know if the designation was called high fire zone, but it was very similar to this, where we had to meet with the fire department and do all the mitigation measures.
And any episodes of insurance denials because of your project?
No. And we have met with insurance companies for this project, and obviously we have several different insurance companies that will insure the project.
Thank you. That's my questions.
Vice Chair, go ahead.
So I think I heard you say that you try to use stucco to reduce fire risk. Is that a true statement that you said?
Yeah, so stucco homes are much more resilient than wood siding homes for fire.
Okay, so this project is using stucco?
It's all stucco, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Linscott, go ahead.
Yeah, do you have any slides or presentations just to outline all of the fire resistance infrastructure changes you've made, like the roofing, the vents, the walls?
Yes, let's see if we can provide that. So what slide number is this, Austin? Let's see. 1, 2. I believe it's slide 4. It was one of the sheets that we went over, but we can walk.
Okay, yeah, if you could walk us through that, please.
And I'll just ask that video share my screen.
Yeah, okay. And then we can add the stucco and the different things that are stacked.
Sure. Again, Steve Bull, SummerHill Homes, Vice President of Development. So the upgrades we've made are the non-combustible landscape, extending a 5-foot perimeter around the homes, or what we call Zone 0. Also added fire sprinkler heads within all the exterior covered porches and decks within 30 feet of the property line. 1 hour fire-resistant ratings for the exterior wall elements and architectural projections surrounding within 30 feet of the property lines. Also the fire-rated eaves, ember-resistant vents, and door openings.
So these are prescribed elements that we had to incorporate into the project due to AB 130 and being in the, if I pronounce it correctly, WUHU. WUI, thank you, WUI. But in addition, for projects like this, we do all stucco, we do closed eaves, roof tiles, things that we know as builders are protective measures.
What kind of roof tiles?
Concrete roof tiles.
And they're fire retardant?
They are, they're rated for, I don't know. Non-combustible. So that's what they're for.
So has anybody from the fire department reviewed these and offered any suggestions for, or did they say this looks good, or did they offer any suggestions for making it even more fire resistant?
So the complete plan set has been reviewed by the fire department. It was approved by the fire department. There were no additional suggestions from the fire department than what we have provided. Obviously, what you're seeing now is the finished product, so we went through several iterations, and the final iteration is this to be compliant.
Great. I have one more question, or I can wait. If, okay, so my next question is about the height difference between the adjacent single-family homes and this. Can you talk about that? Have you done anything to try and address that height difference and to address the privacy concerns of the residents?
Yes, of course. Steve, why don't you take this?
Well, sure. Yes, a couple things. We are at the eaves of our homes 30 feet. So what we've done is we've altered the roof or formed the roof to have hips or sort of a flat level area adjacent to the edge, and then it kind of slopes up over the course of 20 feet plus before it gets to that full height, just to minimize the height adjacent. Also, on those third floor windows, again, the homes primarily live to the front and back facing Linda Vista and also the golf course. But there are some secondary windows on the side, elevation facing neighbors. So what we've done on the third floor was we've sort of obscured those or frosted them over so it can't be seen out of. And then finally, we added a landscape hedge along the fence. It should grow up at maturity 10 to 12 feet high to help add a little bit more privacy.
Okay, so just to be clear, so you said, so it maxes out at 30 feet, you said?
Yeah, so the elevation of the home, the side yard, from the grade to the eave is 30 feet. And then a lot of times we wind up having a gable element for the roof, which adds height. But in these cases, we designed the homes to have hips, which means at 30 feet, they'll go up at an angle towards the center of the building. So at all times that you're looking at is the 30 feet, and then the roof line goes away from you. And I think Steve mentioned the other thing that we tried to do is there was a minimum of 6 foot setback, and we worked with staff to reduce the setback on Evelich Court and increase the setbacks from 6 to 10, and at some locations 11 foot. So those are the things that we worked on incorporating. To
Great, and I think you mentioned something about privacy screening as well?
Yeah, so,
trees?
Yes, I don't know if they're called trees, they're shrubs that grow. We have several that we have suggested. Some grow between 10 to 12 to 15 feet, and we have some other suggestions that can go as high as 20 feet.
That would fit in that 10-foot setback?
Yes, but those are shrubs, not really, I wouldn't call them trees.
Okay, but so, sorry, what was the highest height they could go?
They could go as high as 20 feet.
20 feet, okay, thank you.
I just wanted to clarify, I did not see anywhere in the documents what class rating the fireproofing materials are. Are they Class A or Class B or just anything?
Yeah, Jennifer, do you have any?
Good evening, Commissioners. Jennifer Master with SDG Architects. Are you speaking of the roof specifically?
I was thinking about the roof, actually. I mean, if there are other materials that apply.
No,
then,
so
yes.
I think it's just the roof.
Okay.
I mean, when you say a class rating of,
okay,
it's usually the roof?
Yes. Roof.
I believe they're A. I can double check and confirm for sure. Yeah.
They're concrete roof tiles.
Correct. Clay concrete roof tiles that are non-combustible.
Okay, thank you, because that was not specified in the vesting tentative map, so thank you.
Can either staff or the applicant comment on, is this going to be following the 2025 building codes?
Yes. Oh, sorry.
Okay, so this is going to be subject to the 2025 building code, and the 2025 building code has been upgraded to deal with the very high severity and high severity fire hazard zones and the upgraded.
That is correct. The building permits for this have not been filed yet, so they'll be subject to the current code.
And so can staff briefly touch on what sort of, again, very briefly touch on what sort of improvements come in because of those changes? Very briefly.
Not being the building official, I'm not going to venture out of my lane.
And I will let the applicant comment if they have been following the upgraded building codes.
Jennifer, would you be able to?
So we do have Director Fu at the back if you'd like to join.
So from an architecture standpoint, there's
No, just from a 2025 building code and fire safety.
Correct.
Any salient aspects.
So fire safety wise, all the requirements that we are meeting that we just went over again, we will meet those, and that's 2025 code based. As far as other updates in regards to fire safety, there really isn't. It's that one code section.
Is this maybe your first project with the 2025 building codes?
Our office has submitted other projects.
Okay.
I don't know if we've had one in a very high fire safety zone though, but we're aware of all the measures that need to be taken.
Is this the first project with upgraded building codes that reflect the new fire severity guidelines from the state?
Probably so.
Okay.
But I'll just add, we've done a lot of projects in WUI areas within the Bay Area, not specifically for SummerHill, but for other developers. So we are aware of what needs to be done and detailed in the set to comply.
And I would say I have built in a high fire hazard zone and have complied with all of these measures.
So is it fair to say these new codes, given the state guidelines and what the city had to incorporate for fire severity considerations, the construction at this site is going to be of a significantly more fire-aware quality compared to your past projects? Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, absolutely. When you compare this to our Stevens Creek project that we had before the commission several months back, all of the things that we're talking about are additional things that are being incorporated.
Okay.
I guess if there's one thing to note too, the fire and building code compliance is really not optional. It's you have to comply with them. It doesn't have the flexibility, say, of planning regulations.
Okay, if we have any very quick questions, I'd like to take them, and then we can move to public comments.
I do have a few more.
But, you know, it's 8:45, and I think the public has been waiting here for 2 hours, so I would like
we
to
can do
give them the
public
opportunity to speak. So anyone have quick questions?
I have a quick question
Yes.
for staff. Okay, in looking at the plans and looking at the International Fire Code, IFC Appendix D105, I noticed several areas where the plans don't comply. So how are they getting waivers to not comply with D105? I mean, the fire department can't just say, oh, don't bother. I mean, what is the procedure to get out of this?
So these plans were reviewed by our fire department, and we have a representative here who maybe can touch on specifics.
Yeah, that was not my question, but anyway, okay, thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, Commissioner Schaaf, did you want the fire department to comment? Because we do have a representative here.
No, I'm asking the staff why they are allowed to not meet D105. I don't need the fire department to tell me what's in D105. It's perfectly clear.
I'm just indicating I don't know what that is, so I
Okay.
would need them to respond to
Okay,
that.
thank you anyway.
City Attorney, would it be acceptable to have public comment and then have the fire department answer questions?
Yes.
Okay. Let's move to public comment then.
Actually,
City-
I had one other.
Oh, I'm sorry.
One other
Commissioner
simple
Fung.
one
Okay.
while you're up here. So I did want to confirm, it is actually in the report, the appliances here are all electric in this.
That is
in this
correct. It's
building?
all
There's
electric.
no natural gas.
That is correct.
In this area. And I believe when we discussed this, you said you were also undergrounding the current.
That is correct. All the electric lines fronting the project is being undergrounded.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, yeah, City Clerk, how many public comments do we have?
We have 17 speakers in person and no hands raised on Zoom, Chair.
Okay, so it should be acceptable to allow everyone to speak the full 3 minutes? Okay, great.
Okay, our first speaker is David Yan, followed by Derchang Cao, Frank Swanson, and Alice Lin, followed by Harvey Wu Sang Jr. Welcome, David. And video, if you could please share my screen.
I do have a presentation. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, planning commissioners, and as well as planning staff. There are really two 30-foot standards that are going to govern this project, as well as justify the legitimacy of the proposal before you tonight. Let's go to the next slide, please. The first is D105. Some of it has already been discussed. And I actually want to thank Mr. Ibrahimi, the Senior VP at SummerHill, for acknowledging just 10 minutes ago that from the grade plane to the eave of the roof, that it is in fact 30 feet, because maybe I won't even have to present this slide. But there's a very clear requirement here that from the grade plane to the highest point of the roof, you guys can read it, I don't need to quote it, that if it's over 30 feet, that it triggers what's called an aerial access apparatus requirement. And what that will require is that the roads inside Eveledge Court get expanded from 20 feet, as proposed, to 26 feet. So we're not just talking about minutia, we're not talking about a nuance. This is a bright line rule, and it addresses squarely the geometry of the entire project. Okay? And so, to quote the attorney, it's more likely than not, based on this drawing that was provided to me from fire, that something is amiss. I encourage everybody to take a look at it. The code defines the measurement. It's not a preference. It's not a planning staff opinion of what is reasonable, and you cannot just defer to fire. You have a responsibility here. The planning staff has a responsibility to review it. Next slide, please. Okay, the second 30-foot standard which governs this project is the horizontal setback. We talked about density bonus waivers and height waivers not necessarily conflicting with the general plan. That's actually correct. However, AB 130 says that there's a 30-foot setback that has to take place, and they've reduced that down to 10 feet. That can only happen if you have equivalent fire mitigating standards equivalent to the existing standards. So essentially, if you read the AB 30 memo, they have proved compliance with the existing standard by waiving it. Okay, and what the actual requirement is that you need an equivalence finding, okay, to make it exactly the same from a risk standpoint as it would have been had you not reduced the setback.
Thank you, David. That is your time. Our next speaker is Sir Chang Kao, Frank Swanson, and Alice Lin, followed by Harvey Wu Sang Jr.
Okay, good evening, commissioners. My name is Chang Kao, and
Frank Swanson.
Sorry,
Alice Lin.
so we are the residents of the Linda Vista corridor. As you can see on our second slide, if you can move to the second slide, the core issue is a fundamental shift in the safety data. Okay, the parcel was rezoned R3 based on 2007 fire map. However, in March 2025, CAL FIRE updated the fundamental change. That is a fundamental change of the safety baseline. Okay, we are now in a high-risk environment where the spread at the rate of the 200 acre in 20 minutes. This is the sovereign data that we learned from Pacific Palisade fire. Okay, so in this new reality, the 30 minutes evacuation window isn't a goal. It is a survival requirement. Having said that, the developer's report on the Hexagon transportation consultant suggests that the project if you can move to slide 5, okay. Number 5, okay, is has less than 1 second of the delay to our road. No, the next slides. But look at the data on the slides 5. Hexagon's model, they only provide a Tuesday morning commute with additional 30 cars per hour. Okay? In the wildfire, we are facing the emergency surge of the 250 vehicle attempting to exit a single access spine, Linda Vista Drive, in 30 minutes, again, the critical 30 minutes. Furthermore, the developer study ignored what happened when power goes out. In a disaster, all intersections default to four-way stops. This has dropped our road capacity another 50%. Okay, this is a critical factor that developed complete omitted. So if you can go to slide 3, using the standard traffic engineering principle. Okay, I'm an engineer, so I love number. I provide all the detailed number for the model. Using this the principle, we model a utilization ratio for the project as shown in the slide 3. The R3 density push our road to 110% of the capacity. So what that means? In the engineering, a ratio over 100% means a system failure. It creates a standing queue where car arrive faster than the intersection can process them. This is just not the traffic jam. The model says it's 45 plus minutes of queuing delay. Plus, think about coming out from the average court. You got the 51 units car want to kind of merging into the Linda Vista. This is this is narrow road. This create another 28 minutes of the merging bottle. The result is a total order to safety time of 90 plus minutes. Okay, so you are asking 155 families to wait more than an hour and 30 minutes in the tunnel of fire. It's an objective, quantifiable hazard to human life. So in summary, under the SB 333, the city must deny the proposal if there is specific adverse impact on public safety. We urge the commission to reject the proposal and instead consider a low-density alternative to maintain a safe utilization ratio below 50%. Our model provides mathematical proof of this impact. We strongly suggest you direct the developer to consult with a reputable wildfire evacuation expert for a comprehensive cumulative corridor study of evacuation. We must keep the evacuation window within the critical 30 minutes safety threshold. Please do not approve this project. Logically and mathematically guarantee a bottleneck during our neighborhood's most desperate hour. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Harvey Wu Sang Jr., followed by Al Spencer, followed by Patrick Sweeney.
It's Henry, not Harvey. And do you have my slides, or shall I present them?
Yes, we have your slides.
Okay. Can you display them? Okay, great. So my name is Henry Sang. I'm a resident of 38 years, and I'm also working with a group of volunteers as an ad hoc resident wildfire committee. Next slide, please. The groups that are represented in that are shown in red on this map, and they're primarily HOAs and other housing units. We are conducting surveys, we're doing tours, we're going around inspection, we're writing a report on the issues, as well as doing an educational series. Next slide, please. We've seen this. Let's go to the next slide already. The main thing that we're looking about is the red zone, the fact it's a very high danger zone. The Stevens Creek Trail that is directly next to this represents actually the wildfire to urban interface. And as many of you may know, about 20 years ago, Linda Vista Park had a wildfire event with, red dropping stuff and helicopters and all that type of thing. And the fact that it's a multiplex, it defines a very heavy fuel load that is problematic for radiant heat on our neighboring houses. And because of that, we worry about a domino effect. So next slide, please. Just to show you what the Stevens Creek Trail looked like about 2 weeks ago, there's a fairly significant fuel burden along that trail that's very dangerous. And this is right at the end of where the canyon is going to blow embers. So we have a very high probability event there. Next slide, please. So for recommendations, we would like to see all of the decks and balconies made of Class A rated materials, not just that they be having sprinklers, that also the CCNRs for the HOA forbid violations by the owners of Zone 0 and Zone 1 restrictions, and that we have a minimum provision for fire department access to the sides of approximately 20 feet. Also, all of the fences and walls should be built out of Class A materials, and that we will see where they have no flat roofs, but gutters, valleys, and everything with ember proofing. In addition to the doors being wildfire safe, we'd like to see all of the windows to be wildfire safe, and that the HOA consider providing for fuel reduction and maintenance along that Stevens Creek Trail, and that any building heights that are higher than what the existing ladder trucks can handle, that the HOA provides for fire equipment or compatible buildings, or another solution of some sort, such as foam. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Henry. Our next speaker is Al Spencer, followed by Patrick Sweeney, followed by Keith Kreft. Welcome, Al.
I just have a couple of comments. Looking at this thing, the existing neighborhood contains a lot of three-bedroom, single-story homes. It seems to me that we ought to be including a lot of three-bedrooms home in this development. Quite possibly, if we put them on the ends next to adjacent buildings, you could lower the height in that area with it. The second thing is that with this many units and this many bedrooms, I expect there to be at least 100 children in this neighborhood that want a place to play. I don't see it in this development. I think the Planning Commission should find a way to provide recreation for these kids. I think there's going to be a problem there. The third thing is that my end of the street fills up with cars when any single home has a party. Where are the people that are visiting these people going to park? We need to make sure there's adequate provision for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Al. Our next speaker is Patrick Sweeney, followed by Keith Kraft, followed by Jennifer Griffin. Welcome, Patrick.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I don't want to get into the facts of my previous speakers, but I do have some experience on the fire resistance. My brother-in-law lives in Forest Ranch, my sister along with him. Forest Ranch was a victim of the park fire this past fall. The park fire started in Bidwell Park in Chico and worked its way up a canyon. There was plenty of time for my brother-in-law to evacuate. He decided to stick it out as long as he could. His house was fire safe. He had a defensible perimeter, more than double of what is required. A single-family home with probably 50 feet between the homes. The fire was so hot, it melted his windows in the back. It would have burned. He had a generator with a sprinkler running 24 hours, and it didn't help. The only thing that saved the home was that there was time for fire crews from various areas. A fire crew from San Luis Obispo saved their home by just coming in the front door, and it made a mess, but they saved the home. In this development, a gated community of about 20 plus homes, 3 homes burned, and the fire crews couldn't save them all. So I just wanted to point out that being defensible with non-combustible materials won't make any difference in a high-density development. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Our next speaker is Keith Kraft, followed by Jennifer Griffin, followed by PK. Welcome, Keith.
This is my first Planning Commission meeting. I want to say thank you for your service. I can see your responsibilities are huge and your decisions are not easy to make. Can you see this overhead?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. I think most of you know the old Sesame Street jingle. One of these things is not like the others. One of these things just doesn't belong. I'm sure you can identify the anomaly in this picture. This proposed complex does not belong in a single-family residential neighborhood, especially not in one that is already severely impacted with limited access from only 2 directions, the north and the east, and impacted by heavy traffic generated by 3 residential schools. Zoning laws exist for a reason: compatibility. The principle of zoning compatibility was established by the U.S. Supreme Court in 1926. It is the backbone of American land use law, built on the idea that like uses belong together. The court explicitly upheld the right of municipalities to separate incompatible land uses in order to protect the character, design, health, safety, and welfare of residential neighborhoods. Justice Sutherland put it perfectly. Paraphrasing here, the right thing in the wrong place is a nuisance, like a pig in the parlor instead of in the barnyard. Courts have upheld these principles time and time again. We don't need another legal battle to prove what is already well established. We simply need to do the right thing, restore zoning of this property to what it was and what it should be. Find another area to build 40 homes or a 40-unit complex, somewhere appropriate, but don't put a multi-unit complex in a single-family residential zone. And use this property for what it is suited for, a small development of roughly 10 single-family homes. Thank you. I do want to point out that I attended all the meetings that were held by these gentlemen here, and basically they just said, you're stuck with this. So while they engaged the public, they just weren't making any concessions. Everybody was objecting to 51 homes in this small parcel, but they just basically said, it's going to be this way. They also said that all the homes are going to have two garages, but there are no driveways. I did a poll in our neighborhood. The average number of cars that end up in a garage is 1, and the average number of cars is more than that. Okay, thank you very much for your time.
Our next speaker is Jennifer Griffin, followed by PK, followed by Amin Yazdi. Welcome, Jennifer.
Good evening, Planning Commission. I'm glad that you all are having this meeting. I'm glad to hear from SummerHill speaking and from the neighbors. This is a very important area, important project. My husband grew up in Monte Vista, attended Monte Vista High School, and I believe it was Kennedy. And one of the remarks about this area is there's like one way in and one way out. And I respect the fact that the fire department has made suggestions about this. I was aware that it had been put into a high fire zone area last summer. And I don't know if you all were aware, within the last 2 years, there were sections of Los Altos that were almost under mandatory evacuation from wildfire. I know someone who lives in that area near my church. I'm appreciative that this project has a very nice, I like the Spanish style. It's very, very refreshing from some of the other things that could have been planned in here. I am a bit worried about the density. I'm worried about evacuation routes. When the fire comes down, you just have to remember Lahaina. We have a family member that lost a house in the Pacific Palisades, and I know someone whose house was completely gone in the CZU fire. The lot is stripped, empty, it's already sold. I just wanted to make a statement that Assemblymember David Alvarez from San Diego has already submitted AB 2433 last week to get the bill in for the 2026 legislative session, and this bill is going to make major changes to the housing density. He's calling it the Affordable Homes Bonus Program, and it would be changing the bonus density completely. I would like to have assurances that this project will not be subject to this new law if it passes and comes into play in January of 2027, because they are using floor to area ratio now. They are completely changing the density bonus. It is it's spaghetti code, basically, like SB 79. So I would like some assurances that if this project goes through, that they will stay with the current SB3, I'm sorry, the density bonus, and not go with Mr. Alvarez's new bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Our next speaker is PK, followed by Amin Yazdi, followed by Mark Fantozzi. Welcome, PK.
Thank you. Good evening. Planning Commission, Amy and Luke, thank you for meeting with us several times. And our neighbors here, as well as our SummerHill colleagues. I live on Baxley Court. So for those who have not been to my home, I would like all of you to come and see what it's going to feel like. A 10 feet from my fence is going to be 3-story building overlooking our bedroom, overlooking our family room. What we are asking is that 10 feet needs to go further and 3-story needs to come down. There is really possibility to reduce the number of square footage per home and get what they are looking for, but there is no reason for us to have 3-story building right next to my fence. And what I was also told is between that 3-story tall wall and our fence, there cannot be any trees because there is only 10 feet and fire insurance won't let them plant anything. So I think we really need to be cognizant of the fact that this is going to be reducing our privacy, is going to be impacting our safety. And I'm requesting that it reduce be two-story instead of 3-story and the setback be increased back to what was expected in the past. Thank you.
Thank you, PK. Our next speaker is Amin Yazdi, followed by Mark Fantozzi, followed by Vakram Saxim. Welcome, Amin.
Actually, we're going to use our...
Okay.
He's going to use my time. Okay, thank you. All right, I don't need to... my name is Mark Fantozzi, and I submitted a written communication which evaluated the project against the general plan and other life safety concerns at the airport. And I want to just basically summarize those as quickly as possible with the limited time we have. First, the project exceeds the 30-foot height limit by about 10 feet 7 inches. And this is in conflict with the Cupertino Municipal Code and the general plan, which only allows buildings taller than 30 feet on arteries or major collectors. Linda Vista is not an arterial connector. Second, the project reduces the 12-foot street setback on Evulich Court to as little as 3 foot 7 inches. That's a reduction of about 8 feet. These are not small adjustments. These are major encroachments into required safety buffers and violates the Cupertino Municipal Code. Third, the project exceeds the allowable FAR ratio with the proposed 136%, over 50% of the objective limit. That's a dramatic intensification of bulk and massing that no neighborhood plan envisioned. Fourth, the private open space dimension fall below the required 6-foot minimum with patios smaller than 4 foot 6 inches, violating the Cupertino Municipal Code. Parking stalls are also undersized at 18 foot 6, which we require 20-foot minimums. These are all objective standards, not subjective ones, and they are not being met. Fifth, as your own staff report confirms, the site is now in a very high fire hazard severity zone, yet no evacuation study was required. The city has no adopted evacuation standards, and emergency access with such narrow setbacks has not been demonstrated. Approving a 40-foot tall, 51-unit project in a very high fire hazard safety zone without evacuation analysis is not consistent with the city's general plan safety policies. Finally, the staff's reliance on AB 130 CEQA exemption is unsupported by substantial evidence. That exemption only applies if a project meets all applicable fire hazard and safety standards. The record does not demonstrate that, especially given the lack of evacuation analysis. In summary, this project fails to meet multiple objective zoning standards and conflicts with the general plan and lacks the required life safety evidence for a CEQA exemption. Now, to put the following into some perspective, I'm an engineer, a registered civil engineer in California. And although I didn't have time to include my review of the transportation study, environmental study, and the biological study, I found significant errors and omissions in each of those reports, to the extent too much to explain here tonight in limited time. But I'm more than happy to meet with planning and go over those documents in detail with what I found out. Furthermore, there was no reporting on fire flow demands and effect on the existing fire systems. There was no drainage study by converting the existing permeable material to nearly 90% impermeable. The bioretention is only designed to handle 85 percentile of a 24-hour rain event. This is 3/4 to 1 inch of rain in a 24-hour period. Based on the last two storms, we've had 2 inches of rain in a 24-hour period. So that water's got to go somewhere. It's going to go in the storm. I respectfully urge the Commission to deny the project as proposed or require a substantial redesign that complies with all...
Thank you. That is your time.
I thought we had 2 people.
Yes, you had 4 minutes.
Oh, okay.
It's 2 minutes per person.
I'm going to start. Commissioner, I'm a resident of Linda Vista Drive. Since the housing element was adopted, there has been a material change in the safety conditions. As the city noticed, this area has been designated as a very high fire hazard severity zone at the wildlife-urban interface. This is a chain fact which the Commission must weigh in. My 2 asks. Please do not find this project exempt from CEQA under AB 130. The statute explicitly excludes sites in a very higher fire hazard safety zone, and this site should not be exempt from CEQA. And the second one is place all fire safety communications in public records before the Commission votes. Every exception, every waiver signed and cited. Why? The residents have submitted how California Fire Code is being applied by the Sacramento Metropolitan Fire District. Sacramento makes the laws which govern our state, and the interpretation of the local fire district carries weight. These guidelines meant to apply to all developments, and to not apply them in a very high fire hazard severity zone would be an abdication of your responsibility to the citizens and residents of Cupertino. The couple of things. First thing is, as interpreted by Sacramento Fire District, any complex which has more than 39 units, multifamily, requires 2 exit roads. This one has 51, and it has only 1. The second part is aerial access requirement for fire safety. Fire engines often use aerial ladders to go up to the 3rd floor, and the requirement, as clearly stated, is if the building is about 30 feet. We know that the buildings are going up to 40 feet, and why those requirements are not being enforced in a very high fire hazard zone is beyond I cannot understand why. The third part is we did some analysis on whether 10-foot setbacks are good enough for even manual ladders, and even they are not enough. You need about 10 to 12 foot of space for a fireman to be able to operate a manual ladder and go up to the 3rd story, and even that's not met by that. All those findings have been shared and written comments, and it would be prudent for the Commission to go through all those things before you make any determination of this. I think the other aspect is Sacramento wants us to build housing, but they don't say that you have to destroy all setbacks and build 2,700 square foot townhomes to meet affordable housing requirements. If these townhomes are reduced to 1,500 square foot, we can meet the 30-foot setback requirements required by code. And there is no reason why the city should jeopardize our safety just because some developer or something has to maximize their profits.
Thank you. That is your time. Our next speaker is Craig Cummings, followed by Srinivas Ravandra, followed by Rhoda Fry. Welcome, Craig.
Good evening. I'm Craig Cummings. I live on Baxley Court. I've lived there about 25 years.
It's right around the corner from the proposed development. We've heard a lot of concerns tonight, and I'm not going to try to get into any of the details of any of those. I just want to note that this project's been fraught with difficulties right back to the beginning with the housing element and the approval of the change of the zoning, which seemed to happen without sufficient public notification. But that's water under the bridge. We can't do anything about that. That's gone, I suppose. But what we can do is address the concerns that we've got. Things like the fires in the Palisades. I was reminded of Santana Row when that burned, when it was all just under construction. We talked about the Linda Vista fire of 2007. And a photographer had given me these pictures. And just a reminder that fire danger in our neighborhood is real. This is right over my back fence, so this is something that can be very real. So my request is that you listen to all the concerns that have been brought out here and clear them all before you push this thing forward, and make sure we know what we're doing, because there's some real high danger here. That's all I ask. Thank you. One more picture.
Our next speaker is Srinivas Raghavendra, followed by Rhoda Fry, followed by Dan Marshall. Welcome, Srinivas.
Thank you, commissioners. Thank you for your service. I have a very simple ask of you. I do not understand SECA. I don't understand R1 versus R3. I understand wildfire. I understand what happened in Palisades. I understand that innocent people who were having their daily life got affected. Is affected because urban planning broke down in those places. And their excuse was they did not anticipate such wildfires. We are now seeing unprecedented things that never happened before. Wildfires, the scale never seen before. Juxtaposed with these new laws about housing density. So people who made this housing density probably have not understood the risk that we folks take. I also live on Baxley Court. I also saw that the airplane dumped fire retardant just behind our back doors. These are real problems. These are not hypothetical problems. We have 3 schools in our neighborhood. At 2 p.m., you can't take a bike through that, leave alone a car. So if at 2 p.m. you have a wildfire, imagine the evacuation backlog. So here's what I ask of you folks. I know you're bound by legal advice, you're bound by staff advice, but I want to make the point to you that these are untested theories, in the sense that I do not know of a case that's been litigated where high-density housing, high-density areas were forced to have, let me say it differently, high fire hazard areas were forced to also have high-density housing. This almost seems so absurd on the face of it. I can't imagine any judiciary, any judge support that. So I ask of you the following. I'm going beyond what my fellows. I'm asking you to go beyond and be ready for a legal battle if necessary, because a lot of other communities will cheer us on and support us on, because what's out there is absurd. You cannot have high-density housing in a high fire hazard zone. There's nothing that people in Sacramento say that can make it right. You heard Supreme Court opine on this long time ago that you cannot do stupid things. There's a law of the country. That nothing can override that. So I ask of you, please push back and say no to this. These are nice gentlemen, nice people, but they do not understand. They don't live where we live. You're nice people, but you don't live where we live. We live with the threat of a wildfire in our backyard. And that is something you need to internalize. And so I ask of you, please push back on this. And if this becomes a matter of litigation, we'll support you. We'll blaze new trail here that the rest of Cupertino, the rest of the country will do. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That is your time. Our next speaker is Rhoda Fry, followed by Dan Marshall, followed by Connie Cunningham. Welcome, Rhoda.
Hi, I feel a little bit challenged following all of this compelling testimony this evening. In hindsight, if the state had come in with where we are with the fire at this point, would our housing element have come out different? And I also wonder about CEQA. I don't see how this project could possibly be exempt from CEQA, and that is the overriding issue, because everything that you're asked to vote on tonight is predicated on a CEQA exemption. So if it's possible that it isn't exempt from CEQA, then you don't have anything to vote on tonight. So I wonder about that. I wonder about how those individual homes, those new homes, could possibly get home insurance. You know, there's homes that are already built where people just can't afford their home insurance now. As a mitigation, if this project were to move forward, I think that they should look into rock wool for their insulation assemblies. It's essentially, rock wool is kind of like what those fire logs are made out of, in fake fire logs for fireplaces. They don't burn, so that would help. You know, your job is to protect the residents, but also to protect the city. And I've seen the school traffic. I've lived through it. I'm not a neighbor of that property, by the way, so it's sort of not exactly my backyard. I've seen the traffic. I've been in the traffic on McClellan. It's with the schools, it's quite daunting. And we need to make sure that we're doing due diligence on this, because if it gets built and there's issues, and you've heard a compelling number of them, then the city is liable. And I want the city to spend money on parks and things that make our lives great, and rather than lawsuits and, of course, having the potential of loss of life in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Rhoda. Our next speaker is Dan Marshall, followed by Connie Cunningham, followed by Lynn Y. Welcome, Dan. Okay, moving on to the next speaker, Connie Cunningham, followed by Lynn Y, followed by Lisa Warren. Welcome, Connie.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Connie Cunningham, and I am on the Housing Commission, but speaking for myself only this evening, I do support this housing development. I never take fire lightly, so it's not that I haven't heard all of the issues that the people are concerned about. I'm particularly supportive because this housing element is a priority site for the city, and it went through many iterations. I was involved in discussions of that. I think it's a great site. It's close to schools, bike trails, and it allows more families to move into Cupertino. It will help our local schools as well by increasing the taxes here. It is urban area, and so it's infill. So that is one of the big reasons I support it. It eliminates sprawl. It includes below market rate homes, for sale homes, and that's great because there are not a lot of for sale homes in the below market rate category. I know about SummerHill Homes, and I think they can work with the city to answer the questions that are being raised by the citizens. And again, nothing scares me worse than fire, so I'm not at all dismissing the issues, but I think that the city planners can work with the SummerHill Homes to answer those questions and build a livable, walkable complex. Thank you.
Thank you, Connie. Our next speaker is Lynn Y, followed by Lisa Warren, followed by Nicholas Cow. Welcome, Lynn.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. So I'm a resident of the neighborhood. First of all, I think this land, this parcel should be developed. Based on what it is, like semi-abandoned for decades, it doesn't really fit with the neighborhood. But in the meantime, how the plan is drafted right now is also not fit with the neighborhood. I think what's really lacking on this whole thing is the transparency to the neighborhood, to the entire community. When we first heard about this thing, we say, oh, we are building high-density homes. It was a surprise because we've been thinking this one, again, abandoned by, for several decades, is a R1 zoning that, if when they develop, should be the same as the conjunction neighborhood. But what was surprising is when we heard about this development probably 2 years back, and we were told that the zoning change was already done. So this is after the fact that, it's already moving to the second stage. While even the first stage, there's a big lack of transparency to us, the neighbors. And later on, I learned that, there was hearings, there was some notice sent over to the residents, but many of us living right around this neighborhood, none of us got any notifications. There was no signages posted on the parcel. And also seems like there was say 20,000 letters sent out to some other Cupertino resident areas. So I guess one of the transparency I'm looking for is when this big zoning change happens, what is the requirement and what is the typical practice? If none of us in the direct neighborhood is even notified, there may be something missing. I also heard from other people that in those letters that people did get notified, there was only partial numbers. There was no map, there was no even address. So I'd like to ask everybody here, who know your own home partial number? Not to mention your neighbors. So there's definitely something missing even from the step one, the zoning change. The other thing I'm trying to say is try to check on the site and try to check on the neighborhood. It takes forever to get out of the neighborhood around 8 a.m. in the morning, around 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. in the afternoon. Here we have a lot of kids, a lot of senior people, working parents, everybody. We need to get out of this place to do regular things. And not to mention the fire, which is many people have mentioned. Even on a regular day, it's taking forever to get out of this place. So I'm trying to see if we can do a simulation. Just put, 51 tents plus, 100 cars in this site and see what's going to happen. Do a simulation for a few weeks and then come back with a better proposal. That's my ask. I urge the committee to deny this proposal.
Thank you, Lynn. That is your time. Our next speaker is Lisa Warren, followed by Nicholas Cow, followed by Louis Morante. Welcome, Lisa.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, it took a while for the unmute button to show up. So I've heard a lot of, so I don't live in the area. In fact, I live probably as far away as I can from where it is, or as anyone can, and still be in the city. But I feel for these neighbors. I'm pleased that they all have varying arguments for why this is not good, and there hasn't been a lot of repetition. I love the phrase untested theories from one speaker, because that, in my mind, is what all the state laws is all about and has been. And they build on each other. And, we forgot to do this, which will mess things up even more, so we'll just add it to the next bill. So the city really doesn't have the control we all want them to have. And we all, because I don't live there, I hope that when there's something happening elsewhere in the city, everyone sticks up for their city, not just their neighborhood. We all need to pull together and feel the pain, whatever it is and however it relates to the neighborhood that these things are going into. And just remember, we are supposed to be a community and we should care about other people's neighborhoods. There's been some of that going on, but sometimes people are so busy you can't keep track of it all. But it's painful. And the staff can't do everything they want to do. And we need to really pay attention to who we vote for at the state level. Really pay attention. And spend money, spend time supporting who you think is going to do the right thing. I want, and by the way, below market rate, that's a joke in ways. I mean, it's a good idea, but that's not affordable in many, 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 many cases. I would like the developer to confirm that, or the city to confirm that this will be required. The 10-foot setbacks and the shrubs being planted, those can be planted, they can grow, then they can die, da-da-da. Are these 10-foot spaces, setbacks where the shrubs are going to be in yards of some of these dwellings, or are they in open shared space? Who needs to maintain those so that they grow the way they are supposed to and that they don't die, they don't get cut by a gardener? If it's not the developer taking care of that space, that has to be written in clearly to whoever buys the units that are hosting the trees. So I think that I would appreciate hearing what that expectation is. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Our next speaker is Nicholas Cow, followed by Louis Morante. Welcome, Nicholas.
Hi, I'm a resident on Linda Vista Drive as well. And I want to thank the gentleman before me that spoke about, fitting things where they don't belong. Looking over the proposal, I noticed so many waivers given to the developmental housing. Almost seems to me like you're trying to jam a square block into a circular hole. For instance, not to sound like a broken record or anything, but talking about the 30-foot setbacks and why we can't do that. What is the issue then with not building 2,700 square foot lots? Reducing that and following the law. Why are we making so many concessions just for this development property? Thank you.
Thank you, Nicholas. And our next speaker is Louis Morante. Welcome, Louis.
Are you able to hear me? Has my time started?
Yes, we can hear you.
Wonderful. Thanks for allowing me to speak tonight. My name is Louis Morante. I'm the Senior Vice President of Public Policy for the Bay Area Council, and I focus on our housing policy. I'm here to express our strong support for the proposed housing project on Linda Vista Drive. As you all know, the Bay Area is in the midst of an unprecedented housing shortage that continues to drive up costs, deepen inequities, and make the Bay Area a worse place to live. It threatens our region's long-term economic competitiveness, but projects like this one are exactly the kind of thoughtful, community-serving investments cities can be and should be making to resolve and assuage that problem. You may have read in the news recently that the median age of a first-time home buyer in the United States just became 40 years old for the first time. That is the oldest median age for a first-time home buyer in American history, and it's symptomatic of the high cost of housing in California and across the country that projects like this are intended to solve. This project would deliver 51 townhome-style condominium units, which are the starter home of the future, and they include family-sized 4-bedroom floor plates, among others. Home ownership-oriented housing at this scale is increasingly rare in today's market, particularly in high-opportunity areas like Cupertino. If we want teachers, engineers, nurses, and young families to be able to put down roots here, we need more opportunities like this. The people who are going to live in these houses often already work in our communities, and this will give them an opportunity to spend more time with their families and be more well-rooted in the communities they already serve. This project also delivers meaningful fiscal and civic benefits, approximately $2.2 million in park fees, about $570,000 in school impact fees, and estimated $50,000 in annual net benefit to the city's general fund, along with the commitment to incorporate public art along the frontage. In short, this is a well-designed project that advances your housing element goals, supports your regional housing needs allocation, and provides tangible community benefits. I urge you to approve the Linda Vista Drive project and make an important step towards addressing our housing crisis while expanding homeownership opportunities in the Bay Area. Thanks for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Louis. We have no speaker cards in person and no hands raised on Zoom, Chair.
Thank you very much, City Clerk. Now we have an opportunity for the applicant to respond to the public comments. Thank you.
Thank you again. Yeah, there are just a few items that I wanted to address. I think there was a question in respect to how the shrubs will be maintained. So the shrubs are going to be landscaped within the common open space within the development along the two property lines, and they are going to be maintained by the HOA's landscape company, and the CCNRs will stipulate that the project is responsible to maintain the shrub buffer landscaping in perpetuity for the project. I hope that addresses that question. I guess, Emmy, could you bring up the slides? I want to address the D105. I believe that was the question. It's at the end of the presentation.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks.
Perfect.
So I believe this was the question in respect to the height, the 30-foot height. This is common in almost every development that we do in the Bay Area. This is the same detail that was used for the Stevens Creek project. The dimension from the eave to the grade is 29 and 9 3/4 of an inch. So it's below the 30-foot threshold. That's what the fire departments ask you to do to comply with their requirements. That's what is being proposed for this project. We did meet several times with the fire department to have this approved. Again, this is very common amongst all of our projects, this standard detail. Okay, so that was that question regarding D105. Do you want to address the 30-foot?
Sure. Yeah, I think one of the community members mentioned sort of a 30-foot setback. I just want to mention the governing codes that are part of AB 130, there's 3 of them, 4290, 4291, and Chapter 7A of the Building Code. Those have numerous cross-references, and it took us a while to get down to this one, so bear with me, and I'm happy to send this information because it's going to be a long code citation. It's California Code of Regulations, Title 14, Division 1.5, Chapter 7, Subchapter 2, Article 5. You don't have to, I can send that to anybody. What that is that's the 30-foot horizontal setback to the property line. It actually has a second component to the center line of the street, which we are in compliance with. But that's Section A of that code. Section B continues and says, if there are, I'm going to paraphrase a little bit because the code citation, it basically says if there are various constraints, such as density, there may be a reduction in this setback. And I'm going to loosely paraphrase, if you can demonstrate or have a number of features, one of which is the non-combustible materials within 5 feet of the homes, which we comply with. That's what we call also known as Zone 0. There are some other measures that are really intended to mitigate or prevent spreading of fire from structure to structure. So what we did was that's where we added the exterior fire sprinklers to the exterior balconies, and we increased the ratings of the exterior walls to 1 hour ratings. Those were the mitigation measures, and those were sort of summarized in what's called an alternate materials in compliance with this code that the fire department reviewed and approved. So I think those are part of the application documents.
So those are in essence prescribed mitigation measures within the code to comply with that section. and that was reviewed by staff and the fire department. Okay, so I'm going to continue, and obviously I can come back to any questions that you have. So one of the reasons we had the neighborhood meetings, we were required to have one, we elected to have two, wasn't to tell the neighbors this is just what it is and you don't have a choice. Essentially, we wanted to meet with the neighborhood to not only hear them, but also to explain what the project is and answer any questions outside of this kind of a forum, so they had the opportunity to ask where we could go into detail and answer the questions. So I just wanted to say the rationale why we had two neighborhood meetings. Let's see, you want to address the one way in?
Oh, yeah. And again, I don't pretend to know these neighborhood streets like any of the folks in this room. Mr. Chang was kind enough actually to share his study with me in advance. And had a little bit of an email exchange, and I just kind of asked the question. I think the point was that he said Linda Vista Drive was the only way out. Just my simple looking at a map, it just looked like there were other ways out as well, such as Hyannisport, Columbus, and Terrace, which go down to Bub Road, which seems to lead to, I think, Rainbow, which gets over the highway or the tracks. I think there's another way, Bub Road, or to McClellan, which goes over and then continuing on to Bub Road over Stevens Creek. So those were just what I saw in my simple look at the math. I don't pretend to know all the back roads of this neighborhood like the folks here.
So there were a lot of comments regarding the reports that were generated for this project, whether it was civil reports or architectural details. What I can say is all of our reports were provided by professional consultants on our part, but then they go to staff. Staff reviews them, comments, and after they've reviewed them, they send them to a third-party consultant outside of the city to plan check. We spent 14 months having all of the reports that were generated for this project be third-party reviewed, not only by staff, but by outside consultants that staff had hired. Obviously, we paid for that. But what I would say is it's very easy to stand up here and say, well, this civil flow rate doesn't work, or in my opinion, I have experience in this, and I don't think the report analyzes this correctly. I think that would be valid if we submitted reports and you had to take the reports based on our assertion, but that's not the case. Everything has been third-party reviewed. I just wanted to point that out. Okay, there was a comment that the project is required to have 2 access points. So that's not the code, the fire code. If you're over 100 units, you're required to provide 2 access points. I've had many projects where I've been up to 90 units and we've been required to only provide 1 access point. Over 100 units, you have to provide the 2 dual access points. I just finished a project in Los Gatos, 155 units. We were required to provide 2 access points because it's over 100 units. That's just a fire code. I think there was a couple comments, and I'm not sure if the person who made the comment was aware that the waivers that were requested on this project were requested in order to make the project work. These projects subsidize a considerable amount of affordable housing, and to make that work, the state has allowed waivers and concessions to be applied in order for a whole project to be feasible. So that's why those waivers and concessions, when applied, still provide the project to be consistent with the objective standards that the city has. I think that's all I had. Did I skip anything?
I wasn't sure if you wanted to mention sort of the distribution and the housing element.
Yeah, please, if you could do that, then we'll have more questions.
Yeah, and this predates us, of course, but I think, as Austin mentioned in the introduction, this one is the only housing element site in this sort of quadrant of the city, and I think it was just to sort of distribute the I guess housing element sites throughout the city, and that's all I wanted to say. I think the code is affirmatively furthering fair action, or affirmatively furthering fair housing. Sorry. Thank you.
And that's why the density is what it is. And I think Margot wanted to make one additional comment on this.
Hi, I just wanted to touch on 3 quick points. One, as staff correctly pointed out, is that the use of concessions and waivers under the density bonus as a matter of state law does not render a project inconsistent with objective standards. So that is established in state law. The city does not have discretion around that. The second is on the CEQA question in terms of whether the project complies with the requirements for very high fire hazard severity zones under that CEQA exemption. There are specific objective standards that are laid out by reference to SB 35, another state housing law, that projects have to meet. And in this case, as indicated on your, I think it's page 8 of your staff report, the fire department did make a finding that the project has demonstrated consistency with all of those requirements. So the CEQA requirement is met, and there is evidence in the record to that effect. And then the last was just to reiterate the point I made earlier about what it means to have a specific adverse impact on health and safety under the Housing Accountability Act. And didn't have time before, but I'm just going to quickly read you the language, which requires a significant, quantifiable, direct, and unavoidable impact based upon objective, identified, written public health and safety standards, policies, or conditions as they existed on the date of the preliminary application. And again, on page 8 of your staff report, staff indicates, and I'm just reading here, the city does not have any adopted objective standards pertaining to evacuation in the event of a major fire or other environmental emergency. So by definition, you don't have a standard against which you can measure emergency evacuation compliance, and therefore under the Housing Accountability Act, you do not have a health and safety basis based on emergency access that would justify disapproval. So just wanted to clarify those points. I know the law can be complicated and it's a lot you guys are having to learn quickly. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you very much to the applicant for answering so many of the community questions. It definitely saves us a little bit of time. The public hearing portion of this is now closed, and I'll bring this back to the commission for questions. Who would like to start?
Actually, were you going to have the fire department speak? I think that, I'm not sure whether that was how we do that.
We do have a representative here, so I mean, I would think if we could consolidate fire questions, sort of answer them as a whole. I think some have been touched on, but it might be more efficient to do that.
Sorry, through the chair, could you reopen the public hearing so we may hear from fire, but also if commissioners have questions, there are follow-up questions.
Okay, reopening the public hearing for the fire marshal to come up. Thank you.
His name is Brad Fox, by the way. Sorry about not making that clear.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, Commission. My name is Brad Fox. I'm the Assistant Fire Marshal with County Fire. I don't have a presentation for you tonight, so I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, but I don't have a presentation as it relates to the public hearing.
Is the city clerk able to put up the member of the public slide? I believe it was David Yan who had a slide on the D105. Are we able to put up that slide, please? And while the slide is coming up, I believe there were some mails that the member of the public sent with the Planning Commission copy 8 that indicated there was an error in the classification of the height. If you may wish to comment on that or add anything.
Sure, I can clear that up. There were members of the community that were asking us if the project was complying with the requirement for aerial apparatus access. Sorry. Let me back up a step and explain why that requirement exists. So if we want to make sure that we can access the roofs of buildings, obviously for ventilation and other operational procedures. So We do that through one of two ways, either with a ground ladder or with the ladder on an aerial apparatus. And so the ground ladders that we carry, which are similar to fire departments across the country, are 35 feet long. So that's where you see that requirement come from of measuring 30 feet to the eaves. So if we can get a ground ladder to the roof and access the roof that way, then we don't need to use an aerial apparatus. So that's what we're testing against to see if we need aerial apparatus access. And so the community asked about this requirement and if it was met, and I personally responded, and I apologize because I don't think I did myself any favors. I responded with that dimension that's shown in that slide of 29 foot 1 3/4. And an astute member of the community correctly pointed out that, hey, this is measuring to the top of the slab, not to the grade plane as the code requires. But thankfully my plan reviewers are more detail oriented than I am, and they did correctly review the project. And so what that detail doesn't show is that the proposed grade plane is 8 inches lower than the top of slab. So if you add 8 inches to that dimension, the total dimension from the eave to the grade plane is 29 feet 9 3/4 inches. So it is still under the 30-foot threshold. And that 8-inch dimension is consistent among all of the proposed 10 buildings.
Could you comment on other fire reviews that you've had for projects? I assume that we've had in Cupertino. I know the applicant has one more, and there have been a few other on Stevens Creek. If you are able to comment on whether aerial apparatus access is any different in this project versus any of the others you've reviewed at similar.
We measure for the requirement the same from project to project, so there would be no variation in the way that we look at that requirement. I don't recall. I think I do know the project that you're talking about off of Stevens Creek. Those are also townhomes. I don't recall off the top of my head if those met the requirement or not, but we do measure in the same way every time consistently.
And in terms of access road width, can you talk about, is this project any different in the access road width compared to what you would require for a comparable project in?
No, again, that's consistent, and it really depends on this requirement for aerial apparatus access. As was pointed out earlier, our standard road width requirement, if aerial access is not required, is 20 feet. If aerial access is required, that widens out to 26 feet because there are outriggers that go out, and the aerial apparatus takes up more width, and we still want traffic and other apparatus to be able to pass. So it's either 20 feet or 26 feet, depending on this requirement.
Thank you.
I had one if I could.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm curious, have you participated in other evaluations of projects, proposed projects in high fire danger zones recently? Or is this unusual? I guess maybe that's really what the question I'm asking.
In Cupertino, none come to mind, but in some of the other jurisdictions that we serve, we have several SB 330 projects that have been proposed in various fire hazard severity zones, including very high fire hazard severity.
And it sounds like the standards are very consistent for your evaluation. Is that true in this case as well? The kinds of mitigations, are they similar in this project to your experiences with some of these others?
As it relates to compliance with the fire code or with Public Resource Code 4290, which is the code that very high fire hazard severity zones are subject to, yes, our reviews are consistent.
Great. Thank you.
Hi there. Quick question about we talked about potentially putting screening bushes or trees in that 10-foot space, so like closer to the fence, obviously. Is that, does that pass fire code? Is that allowed based on the fire code, or is that creating a risk for those homes?
Yeah, when we talk about defensible space, currently and historically, we have talked about Zone 1 and Zone 2, and Zone 1 has historically been from 0 feet to 30 feet, and Zone 2 is 30 feet to 100 feet. And so the newer zone that the state proposed, that the governor issued an executive order for last year, was for a Zone 0, which most people have heard about now, and that's really for that first 0 to 5. Those new Zone 0 requirements were supposed to be sorted out by the beginning of this year, of January 2026. Unfortunately, that got delayed, and so we don't have clear guidance yet from the state on what those Zone 0 requirements will be. So I can't speak to, in the future, if there are bushes and shrubs that are within what we will call that Zone 0. I don't know at this time if those would be compliant with the future regulations. As it is today, talking about Zone 1, you can have vegetation within that area that you're talking about, 0 to 10 feet between the building and the property line.
I had two questions coming from the community, actually. One is, are you able to access all of the windows via ground ladder? Because I'm aware that some areas of the property have bioretention zones that may impede setting down the ladder properly.
I believe a ladder pad exhibit was submitted to us for review, and we did review and approve that ladder pad exhibit. And for the type of construction of this house, or these products, emergency escape and rescue windows are required. So that's the threshold that we look at for being able to ladder.
Okay, thank you. And then my second question is, are the mitigations in the 30-foot setback waiver, so mostly around materials and like 1 hour fire-rated walls, and are these equivalent to a 30-foot setback? And if they are, do you have research or analysis that you could share with the public?
Okay. So on the 30-foot setback, I think the applicant stole a little bit of my thunder because they referenced the section in Title 14. And so the base code does allow for exceptions to that base requirement of 30 feet. And it lists off a bunch of examples, as the applicant said. In addition to that, if you look at PRC 4290, Public Resource Code 4290, in the beginning of that administrative section of the code, it's section 1270.07, that outlines the exceptions to the standards, and there is a clear process for an applicant applying for an exception to a particular standard, and that is the process that we followed for granting this exception.
Right.
And,
oh, sorry. Go on.
Yep. Sorry, I'm getting to your question. So what the charge of that section is to provide the same practical effect as these regulations towards providing defensible space. So the burden is on the applicant to prove that they're providing the same practical effect. So the approach that the applicant took towards mitigation was a combination of both passive and active fire protection through hardening of the structure and additional sprinkler protection, in addition to the defensible space through vegetation management that they cited. So when we look at adding passive fire protection, I think that is well documented as a basis in both the building and residential codes, because if we just look at the California Building Code or the California Residential Code, as structures get closer to property lines, and normally that's less than 5 feet, the building code or the residential code starts to require ratings of exterior walls or projections or penetrations. So I think that the mitigation is well rooted in what we already have established in other building codes. And so, and I also want to clarify that these are mitigations, and the exception process is clearly outlined. And so this is not considered a waiver. We don't issue any waivers to the requirements.
Thank you. So, you know, as you could hear tonight, there's a lot of concern from the public as this area has sustained fires before. How do we ensure that the combination of mitigation measures selected by the applicant are equivalent to 30 feet? Like, what if they're equivalent to 10 feet?
Right. Good question. So, I'm trying to think of
And that's okay if you don't have an immediate answer. I mean, we can have some other commissioners ask questions and get back to you as well.
yeah, if you give me a moment to think about that one, I'll try to get back to it.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, so I was reading section DO 5.1 about the highest roof surface exceeding 30 feet. And I keep hearing, oh, don't worry, the eaves are slightly less than 30 feet, but that's not what that standard says. That standard says the highest roof service shall be determined by the measurement to the eave of a pitched roof, which this is, or the intersection of the roof to the exterior wall. So what is the height from the ground plane to the intersection with the roof of the exterior wall? I never heard that mentioned, because the eave tilts down, right? I mean, you could make an eave tilt down, you know, multiple feet in order to get that height less than 30 feet, but you can't really reduce the height of the exterior wall where it touches the roof. So I'm just wondering, and if you don't know, it's fine. Maybe the applicant knows what the height of the exterior wall from the ground plane to the roof is. So if the applicant can answer that, how many feet is that? Is it more than 30? Is it less than 30?
Sure. And I'll just say before the applicant answers, again, we're looking to make sure that we can get that 35-foot ground ladder onto the roof so we can get on top of the roof. So in the sloped roof detail that this product has, we would be putting a ladder up to the eave. We wouldn't be putting the ladder underneath the eave to the
Yeah, I understand that. I'm just wondering if this is actually meeting D105.1 or not.
Yeah, it does meet it. We are 29
9 3/4. It's the same.
to that location that you're talking about. which
To
is
the
one.
eave.
No, it's both. They're one and the same. They're equivalent. And
So
what
the
you're-
eave does not tilt down at all, is what you're saying.
Excuse me. Yeah. It was explained to me by one of your staff members. So what we're describing is the wall and the intersection with the roof coming down. So the reason is you want that structural integrity of that point. And so, yes, the eave, as my architect explains to me, and that point are roughly the same height. So we get the same measurement. to that 29, 9 3/4.
Okay, so the eave does not tilt down at all from the...
It's tilted down, but it's like it's a
But
very
less than
short,
1 inch.
very short horizontal distance. So yes, I'll defer to my architect. But
So what is that horizontal distance? Because I didn't see it in the plans.
Jennifer?
The eaves on this project extend about 12 inches out, and with the roof slope, there's a slight, it's about a 3-inch different, or it's a 3-inch, sorry, just double check.
So the
So it's a 4 and 12 roof. Can I come and show you a section? It kind of shows it in the
just
section.
a drawing to show that the eave is not more than like 1 inch below the top of the exterior wall.
Are we able to put it on the screen? Thank you.
So this location right here is I know it's tiny, probably hard to tell, but where the eave, it projects out the foot, and the wall plane and the eave, or I'm sorry, the roof, where it meets the wall, it's like a 1/2 inch difference between the two.
Okay, so what is that total distance then?
29.9 or 29.10 1/4.
29, 9 3/4 versus the eave height of...
So the eave would be 29.9 3/4, and the intersection at the wall and the roof would be approximately 29.10 1/4.
Okay, thank you.
Through the chair, may I? So I had questions for the applicant and for fire while we have fire up there. Maybe I'll start with fire first. Have there been any best practices that fire has put in place for active projects under construction, ember patrols during the phase of actual, dry lumber during construction? Do you guys go out and do some patrols, or any other best practices that fire has learned from and put in place?
So there is a section in the California Fire Code that the city adopts, and actually we make a few amendments to that section. I believe it's Chapter 33 of the Fire Code that outlines fire safety during construction. And so I don't recall what the threshold of the square footage is that requires it, but I believe this project would qualify that during the building permit application, they would have to submit a fire safety construction plan. So they would outline details like how they would provide access roads for us during construction, where they would stage different building materials, how they provide water for us during construction, and we would review their site safety construction plan, and with approval of that, then the applicant would follow that during construction.
And is that something that fire reviews, or is that building and planning, or both, or the question to staff? Fire safety plan.
If you can pardon me for a second, I was looking for a charger because my computer was about to go.
The question was, is there a fire safety plan that is part of building or planning reviews?
Yes. Building is obviously even more involved post-approval of the project, and would be reviewing essentially everything fire would be reviewing as well.
And is that a condition of approval, or is that something that you can comment on, whether it should be a condition of approval or anything like that?
Generally, those are all code required, so things that are part of the law wouldn't need to be conditions. I'm not familiar with all 80 of the conditions that are already attached to this resolution, but very often things related to building permits are not restated as conditions of approval because there's no flexibility. You need to get a building permit.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Any other best practices, any thermal monitoring that you're aware of? I know And again, that's an open question to the applicant as well, if you're aware of thermal monitoring on these sites during construction.
Yeah, generally our construction team handles that. It's usually part of the process they go through with the building department, so. Thank you. It's not something that I'm aware of to discuss.
If you might speak into the mic.
Yeah, so generally that's something that our construction team handles with the building department. So it's not really something I have information here to pass on.
So I guess open question to staff and fire and the applicant. Has thermal monitoring been a condition of approval from either fire or the building code or?
Thermal monitoring?
Yeah.
Yeah, not that I'm aware of.
Are you asking like during hot work operations, like welding on site?
Yeah, any kind of mechanisms that would monitor for heat sources that may expose the property to.
There is no requirement that I'm aware of on any of our projects.
Okay. And then just to reconfirm with the applicant, all of the roofs are Class A fire retardant roofs, and the building is stuccoed, so that is a fire retardant siding.
That's correct.
Has staff had a chance to comment on whether Baxley Court is all homes with stucco? Are there any non-stucco homes on Baxley, or should we ask the residents that?
No review was conducted.
All right. So at this point, I'm not really seeing any further fire-related questions. I don't have anything else. Yeah.
This is for both the applicant and the fire person. Can we put up Mr. Henry Sang's last slide, his recommendations?
And as you do that, I did want to point, we work with the fire department, planning and building. We believe that the plans were reviewed and were consistent with the height from the grade to the eave. But if there was ever a comment that you're not, we would just simply drop the roof line by an inch or two, whatever was required. But in this case, as they were reviewed, we were deemed consistent. But again, if at any point something came up that it wasn't, at times during building plan check review, questions like this, I don't believe this one, but questions come up and we just simply comply with what the requirement is. Something like this would be just to drop the plate height by an inch or two in the working drawings.
That's great. We appreciate your flexibility. There's something in front of that slide. Oh, there we go. Can we ask the gentleman to come back up to the podium first? Yes, please. Am I able to ask him a question?
I defer that to the chair.
Yeah, let's make this quick, please.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
I know you said you worked with a bunch of HOAs. How did you come up with these recommendations? Are they vetted by a fire department?
No, these are not vetted by a fire department. We're looking through the literature and talking to various different groups. As you know, that my house is in a yellow zone, so we're looking at things by what do we need to do to ensure safety given what happened in LA. So while a Class B material a lot of times can be used for decks now, that's probably going to change to a Class A very, very soon.
So this is kind of your research.
We're looking at where things are going. I'm not trying to say don't build these things. I'm just trying to say what additional things can we do to make them safe. And also things like the Zone 1, the privacy bushes. In Zone 1, you're supposed to have everything up 10 feet. So I don't know how that's going to work.
Thank you.
Is that it?
Yep. So looking at this list, is there anything, sorry, Ms. Fire Chief Fox, how do I address you? I'm not sure.
That's fine. Or Brad.
Brad. Do you see anything here that you think would improve the fire safety of this development?
Yeah, so there are certainly on the decks and balconies. Yeah, certainly on the decks and balconies, we follow what the requirements are fire hazard zone. So that there's stringent requirements, and that's how the decks and balconies are built.
So are they Class A?
I don't know what those requirements are. Maybe Jennifer, you may be able to. I'm sorry? Okay, she's checking on that.
Okay.
As far as the HOA monitoring all the open space areas, they do that. That's written in the CCNRs that the management company is responsible to make sure that all the shrubs and the trees are trimmed so that we do have that fire safety.
You talked about the access.
Yeah,
Sure.
as far as the access, really the site access has already been reviewed by the fire department and it's deemed consistent. Fences and privacy walls shall be Class A material. They're not Class A materials. They're not required to be Class A materials.
But would it help, is the question.
It may, but again, it's not a standard or required.
I understand it's not the minimum required. I'm
That's
just asking if it would strengthen the fire resistance of the property.
I think anything that you make Class A would strengthen.
All right.
No flat.
I think he means roofs.
Roofs, yeah. We don't have any flat roofs. Gutters and are protected by amber proofing. Yes, they are.
Okay.
Windows and doors should be wildfire safe. Yes, they are. They're dual pane with one glass that's tempered. That's required. HOA provides fuel reduction and maintenance along Stevens Creek. So the HOA will provide fuel reduction and maintenance on its private property. We can't, DRE wouldn't allow us for them to do outside work off their property. And building heights below what existing ladder trucks can cover. So
we talked about that.
That's been covered.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Through the chair, I'd like to switch focus a little bit. I have a different question for maybe staff and the applicant. I'm looking at Google Map, and it is a question that will come back to the fire topic, but I'm looking at a Google Map in Village Court. Is that a city-owned public right-of-way?
Yes, I believe since 1969 it was dedicated, but not improved.
Okay. And I'm looking at Google Map, and Village Court is actually a two egress-ingress into the parcel. So there's a northern side by the Cupertino Hills Swim and Racket, and then there's the egress in the middle of the parcel, I guess, which is what the proposed project shows. Is that your understanding?
The Village Court, that is the city right away, is literally just the cul-de-sac that goes in. Pretty much what you're seeing on the site plan, that's what was dedicated, not the sort of, it looks like a U shape on Google where it cuts to the north and then comes back out. There's only the one entry point that goes into the site.
So we're saying what we're seeing on a Google map with the Village egress at 2 points out of the parcel is inaccurate?
Yeah, I'm uncertain where Google got that because it was just dedicated as a cul-de-sac, really one way in and out. I think it's fair to say that the development as proposed is taking what was dedicated and improving it.
Are there any attachments from staff that would confirm that?
None in tonight's presentation, but we did look into this as we went through the housing element.
I would want to make sure is that a public right-of-way. I understand you're saying there may not be an egress there, but is that a public right-of-way in that northern part of the parcel?
No, there's no public right-of-way there.
Okay, so there's no vacation required?
No, we're not going to be going through that process again anytime soon on this. I can't really explain why Google shows it the way it does, but the dedication for the street, again, goes back to 1969, and it was just kind of a classic cul-de-sac.
Okay. I'd like to segue to a different line of questioning. Are we able to do that? Okay, thank you.
I had one more question for the fire marshal. Thank you for your patience. So were you able to come to an answer on the mitigations and whether they cumulatively bring us back to 30 feet? And or, research around that would be really helpful.
Yeah, so again, using the building and residential codes as a reference based on the type of construction for these homes, a 1 hour exterior is consistent with what is required for going down all the way to a 0 lot line, essentially. So the proposal by the applicant would be consistent with that, in addition to all of the other home hardening features that were already mentioned that are required under what was formerly Chapter 7A. Now it's in the Wildland Urban Interface Code. So we feel that in combination with both passive and active fire protection and all of the WUI requirements, that the structures are resilient to wildfire.
Okay, thank you. Is there research around that is publicly available? The 0 feet for a 1 hour rated wall?
So I am, you can look at the building code or residential code, and there's specific sections in there that specify when you have to rate the walls based on separation from property line and based on the type of construction.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, Commissioner Rao, you wanted to?
Yeah, I'd like to segue out of the fire discussion into a different topic really quickly. Is there any sort of understanding about the egress through the Cupertino Hills? Is that an option? Has staff looked at that?
You're referring to the trail connection that was offered?
Well, emergency egress would need to be automotive.
I'm not familiar with the emergency egress on this. I don't know if that's something you could speak to, or if that would be, I realize Brad just sat down.
Okay. Okay, very good. We won't have Brad come back. I'm going to segue to a different part here. So have the tribal consultations occurred?
Yes, they have occurred.
Any feedback or anything else?
Defer to you.
So we had consultation with one of the local tribes, and they indicated that they did have some concerns relating to monitoring as well as education of the workers regarding the sensitive cultural resources that may be on site. However, we were not able to come to a decision on the wording of certain conditions to reflect that prior to the end of that consultation period. And so the standard language, which does include requirements for monitoring during project construction, was included as part of this resolution that you have. And then the city also does have requirements for education of workers prior to commencement of any work on the site.
So does the AB 130 deadline extend if the tribal consultation is still pending?
So the tribal consultation isn't pending because the consultation period ended. AB 130 outlines very specific deadlines that they would also need to meet when participating in consultation. And as that has concluded, we then move on to the kind of approval and or decision-making process for that.
Yeah, and so I just want to clarify. So the tribes themselves get 60 days, is that right?
Right. So they get a 45-day consultation period with a 15-day extension.
And when did their notification start?
I would have to look back at my notes to check when that all started.
When did the tribal consultation end?
I believe it ended in January. I'm trying to think back here. Yeah, early January. Either January 4th or 6th, if I'm remembering correctly.
Okay. Switching to a different
January 6th. Just to confirm, January 6th was it when the period ended?
When the tribal consultation ended with no feedback.
Well, I think we had the feedback.
Again, with no decided upon or agreed to conditions.
Thank you. And then has there been any incomplete notifications to the applicant so far on the application? Is there any?
So the project was reviewed for its completeness, meaning it had provided all of the items listed on our application, and that happened within the first 30 days of us receiving the application. We then reviewed a second submission that did address all of the items that are on our application checklist, and then it moved into a consistency review, and that identifies the objective standards within our general plan, BMR housing manual, as well as our zoning code that apply to the project. And so we went through multiple rounds of review for that. And by the end of it, we found that the project was consistent. And I believe that that matrix that we used to identify all those objective standards was included as, I want to say, attachment 5.
So staff have not had any application incompleteness in this project?
So again, it was determined incomplete when it first came in, but then they provided all the information to make it a complete application.
Okay. Has the application been materially revised? Has there been a material revision of the application that would reopen the AB 130 window?
Oh, so not from when we assessed the project under the AB 130 criteria. No changes have been made.
Okay. So at this point, so April 4th is the deadline for approval, and this goes to City Council on
March 17th.
Okay, and so effectively we are looking at either we are done with Planning Commission today, or we're going to have special meetings if it came to that, if we needed another hearing for Planning Commission. Is that fair?
That would be fair because I believe that's the last regular city council meeting prior to April 4th.
Okay. I'll pause there, yield my time.
Okay, are there any other questions for either the fire marshal or the applicant?
Oh, yeah, I have one. Yeah, I'm looking at the CEQA exemption memo, and it says to accommodate the design of the project received approval of alternative means or methods from the fire department to reduce the 30-foot setback from adjacent buildings. Is there a document that says what those mitigation measures were? Do we have it in front of us?
There was an approved alternative means and methods request, and Brad can speak to the specifics of that, but it does outline how they were able to meet all of those requirements.
Okay, so that's in our packet, right?
That's not included within the packet, but it can be provided.
So why do we not see it? I mean, it seems pretty important. I mean, why was it not included?
It just wasn't included, unfortunately, but I definitely can hand that over to you.
Right, but we're supposed to vote on this tonight, right? Okay, thank you.
It is in the packet, in the plan set.
Yeah, I thought there was the page in the restricted plan set, but I don't know if that's the same thing as what you're referring to.
That's the same information. It just wasn't included in the agenda packet as a separate
But it is
attachment.
part of the plan set. Right. So the information is there.
So the public did not see it then, right? Okay.
Sorry. Thank you. Yeah, this is a summary of the measures we've been describing. It's in the plan set. I think that was posted on the city website.
We can't read that small print here anyway, so that's fine.
That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, Commissioner Linskog?
Okay, the trail that you have offered, could that be considered a secondary evacuation route?
Not really. I mean, that is a pedestrian bicycle access to the trail. And we're not really offering it. I think what happened is in some of our meetings with the neighborhood, there were several people that expressed interest. It's not an objective standard by the city to provide it. It's not part of the plans. They said, can you please talk to staff to see whether there's interest? They had interest. We said, sure, we'll have that discussion. We talked with staff. Staff said, if you want, draw an exhibit, show us what you think could be done. We do the exhibit. We worked with staff, and at all times we're neutral on this. We're not advocating for it, and we're not saying no. We're just saying if the city chooses to have that connectivity, we're more than happy to include it in our plan sets. We would need to get reimbursed for the cost. Staff said, well, we need to know what the cost is, so we went out there and did some initial bids, and the dollar amounts in there. So that's really for bicycle and pedestrian access, not any other. It's not really for any evacuation.
No, I understand it's not for evacuation, and I know it doesn't legally qualify as evacuation, but I did look up, what qualifies as an evacuation route, and a secondary evacuation route can be a pedestrian route. So it could be used as an evacuation route, even though it doesn't, it's not legally required or qualified as such. Is that correct?
I can't.
Okay, no,
honestly,
I get it.
I can't say it's
Sure.
because there needs to be set standards for it to be called that.
I get it.
But again, we're open to whatever the city decides that they want to do with that.
Okay, awesome. Second question. So looking at the plans, right? would you be open to the 5 houses that are on the south side, not necessarily the end one, but the other 5, making those 2-story homes?
Sure. So we've had long discussions. The neighbors have, every time we've met, asked for that, and we understand why they're asking for it. Frankly, the project with a 20% affordable housing needs to be subsidized with a certain amount of square footage to make the project feasible. If it could be feasible without reducing the size to 2 stories, we would have done that. We looked at it many times. We're not able to do that. So they do need to stay as 3 stories.
Even if you reduce some of the BMRs above on the north side?
You mean if we didn't have BMR units?
Well, if you basically just shifted the count of BMRs from the north side to maybe doing a row of BMRs on the south edge.
It doesn't change the pro forma for the project.
I'm sorry, why doesn't it? You're moving BMRs, right?
Yeah, by moving the BMRs from one location of the site to another, it won't change. You're still going to have to provide, the BMRs are like, I believe around 500,000 or so. You're still going to have to provide the BMR units, the number of the BMR units. So that doesn't change the equation for the feasibility of the project.
So I guess I'm not sure I understand that. So if you still provide the same number of BMRs, right?
Okay.
But instead of having some of them on the north side or kind of northish side, right, in the middle there, if you put a row of them on the south edge and make them, even less expensive BMRs, because now you go to 2-story, right? We've had a development or a couple of developments that we've talked to where they have agreed to that because they said that it actually benefits them to have a mix of different price, for the units that they're offering. It's not a lot. It's 5. You guys are doing a lot of building in our area. You're going to be a partner with us in our city for many decades to come. Is this something that you would be willing to consider as a good faith to show your relationship with the city long term?
Yeah. So the BMR units, you're going to wind up with 1 or 2 bedroom BMR units.
That's fine.
Yeah, so first,
there is a demand for that too.
Yeah. Potentially, yes. You're substantially dropping the price of the BMR units when you remove bedrooms. So now you go from a $500,000 BMR unit to potentially a $250,000 BMR unit. Bedroom counts do matter on how BMRs get priced. We have looked whether you can reduce the bedroom count and what impact that would have on the financial feasibility of the project. It still has a huge impact. So just going to a 2-bedroom BMR unit, even though the square footage is less, the sales price drops so substantially. Even with 5 units, you're still going to have a head on a project that's not feasible. So I understand the ask. We've looked at many different ways. What can we do with the BMRs and what can we do with the site to see if we can reduce the square footage on the for sale side. By removing the square footage on the for sale side, because the for sale market rate sales price is so much more than the BMRs, so every square footage that you remove from the for sale side has a much bigger impact than what you're doing.
So the other option would be you keep your BMR at 3 stories like you have right now, but the BMR units, if I understand correctly, are 17 feet wide instead of the 21 feet wide that your regular units are, right? So that would give another 4 feet of buffer space. If you put BMR units on the south edge, would you be willing to do that?
So I think that was a question that we were asked earlier. We did look at it. You can't fit those. If you move a BMR unit that's smaller to the other side and you move the 2-car garage to the other side of the cul-de-sac, they won't fit. And Steve can probably address that better than I can, but we've looked at whether you can flip it. You won't be able to put the 2-car garage on the other side and still make the setbacks because of the amount of width that you're adding.
Right, so this is the exact scenario that I had gone through with the developer, and thank you for entertaining my many scenarios that I've asked you. As I mentioned in our conversation, the north side setback next to the tennis courts is less critical to the community. It's not facing anybody's home. And so, if we were to do that swap of the smaller unit on the north with the larger unit on the south and eat into the setback that's next to the tennis court, there's no loss of money in this project for you. So I think that's what we're both asking is, can this be done?
Through the chair, if I may comment on that, I believe there are units on the northern side with is one of the member of the public there, and I also believe, having used the Cupertino Hill swim and racket, thanks to some of the members of the public here, I use the facility. There is a swimming pool there, and there's a number of members of the community that regularly use the swimming pool. So there is in fact a privacy issue on the northern side because those homes will be looking right into the swimming pool, and the community is going to be in the swimming pool there. So
that's one component of it. I would also say by putting the two-story house, you're going to reduce. So that setback that we have on both sides also have all of the bioretention areas. You can't reduce it down to the 4 foot or the 5 foot that you're looking for because the bioretention has to stay on both sides of the project. Because
I wasn't trying to reduce the setback.
But it will, if you introduce it. I've looked at it. That's because we've been asked that question by not only planning commissioners, but also neighbors. If you move the side-by-side garage to the other side and bring the tandem to this side, the amount of setback that you'll have on the side-by-side garage where it's been added, it reduces the setback to the fence to a point where you can't use that as the bioretention that you need for that portion of the site. So you're reducing it so much where it's not just that you're reducing it from 10 feet to 4 feet or 5 feet. You're removing the ability to do that bioretention on that side yard. So it's hard to try to explain the engineering-wise what the impact is, but we have looked at it. It was a good suggestion the first time that we got it, and we looked at it, and it couldn't flip the units.
Through the chair,
that's the easier answer.
Yes.
Question to staff: if this property or project were to add an ADU, what is the setback for ADUs?
You can go to 4 feet of the property line.
Okay. And so if this project were to do 20 DU per acre using a combination of single family home and ADUs, is that considered a down zone for R3TH?
I'm going to stick to the project we have at hand tonight on the agenda.
Yes, I'm trying to walk through the members of the public's questions that we had just for completeness of the hearing. There is, maybe let me rephrase the question. State law prohibits downzoning, is that correct?
State law prohibits downzoning if there's not a simultaneous upzoning somewhere else.
A simultaneous upzoning would mean applicant has to agree to a downzone on a vested application. Is that correct?
That would be the other complication here, though, is they have a vested application.
Okay.
So that locks the standards in at the time the application was submitted.
So just to clarify here, we have a state law that prohibits downzoning unless you do a upzoning at the same time at another location, which would still require the current parcel owner and applicant to consent to that. Is that fair?
Yes, given that there's an existing vested application, yes.
Would the applicant care to comment on any constraints you might have in doing that, or is that something that you considered?
Yeah, at this point, the property owner or SummerHill are not entertaining changing the project as proposed.
Is that a decision the applicant makes, or is that a decision the parcel owner makes?
At this point, both the property owner and SummerHill are not changing the proposed project as it's been submitted. So I think your question is, would we consider doing that? And now, no, we're not considering changing what we have proposed.
Okay, thank you. And a final question on the units here. So do ADUs count as units?
Depends how you look at it. We get credit for them when they're built as counting towards our arena, but they don't count towards the density of a project.
I see. Thank you. That's an important clarification. Thank you.
Sorry, City Attorney, as we approach 11, do we need to have a vote to extend, or does it matter?
Yeah, that was a good question. The rules for the council procedure manual don't apply here, so it's up to your discretion. But just given the layout, perhaps we want to put a cap on time at this point for each of the commissioners.
Yes. So quick questions left from anybody. Vice Chair.
One quick question, because I recall the developers using a waiver concession to make the BMR units different than the market rate, which is fine. But then when the staff mentioned the BMR units are comparable to the market rate units. So I just wonder which of those statements is true.
Right, so the concession is actually for a mix of types. Usually we would ask, because this has 4 different types of units being proposed, that the BMR units be each of the 4. They are providing just one type of unit, one design, one layout, basically. But the sizes of the units are comparable, and that's what we're comparing through that statement.
Because I thought they said the BMR units were smaller, so I must.
They are smaller, but we're still within the, again, comparable is kind of.
Okay, so
subjective.
comparable.
Yeah.
They're comparable but smaller.
Right.
Okay. Right. Thank you.
Quick question through the chair. So I'm looking at the table on page 18, I think, of the staff report. Is it correct that this further reduces our lower income units by 31 plus 8, 39?
Yes, if you're looking at what the housing element anticipated, the estimate was 84 total units, and let me look what we had. 31 low and 18 moderate.
How do we arrive at those projections? Because I'm assuming the applicant had a preliminary app that was about ready to go, given the May zoning versus October preliminary application. How did the projections get so far off?
No, these are worked out with staff and HCD, and this was well in advance. I don't know when we finally landed on those numbers, but 2023, 2024 sometime.
Okay, thank you. No further questions. Thank you.
Any other questions from the commission? All right, the public hearing is actually closed now. Let's move on to comments from the commission.
Yeah, I'm happy to quickly wrap this up. I think we have exhausted what we've been able to go through here. We have talked through the fire scenarios. I believe fire finds the project to be compliant. We have talked through the track record of fires, and it appears like SummerHill has a track record of safety with the projects that they've had, and they will continue to look for measures and best practices between what they're doing and what the fire department requires and what staff require for a fire safety plan to meet those requirements. We have talked through the best practices for privacy, and I don't have a good sense of whether the neighborhood really wants trees and hedges, because I keep hearing the ask is for setback and 2-floor, which we have discussed at length. I do not see an ask for privacy hedges, but I'm willing to put a motion that amends the conditions of approval to consider including privacy hedges, if commissioners want to support that, and let the applicant work that with the community and staff if that's something. And then finally, I believe there is a condition in the Mooney Code that limits the passage of trucks during school hours. And so I'd like to just ask that we amend the staff recommendation to include the hours of restriction for trucks to be 7:30 to 9:30 and 2 to 4 p.m. per the Mooney Code on streets that abut the project, specifically McClellan, Santa Teresa, Linda Vista, Highnesport. With that, I'd like to move that motion if I have a second. No seconds?
I'll second it for the I'll second it for the purposes of discussion. Any further comments from commission?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a friendly amendment or what, but I would prefer that we don't waive the park and lieu fee in order to get the connection to Stevens Creek Trail, just because I think they would put that in anyway.
I will accept that friendly amendment. Would the seconder accept the friendly amendment?
I'm not sure, because there is probably an additional cost incurred upon the developer.
Would Commissioner Scharf second the motion if I accepted your friendly amendment?
Sure.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Can you clarify what you mean by you think they're going to build it anyway?
Right. I mean, if you look at the parcel, it's a big benefit to the residents of those 51 units. It's a big selling point, and yet they're asking for this huge amount reduction in the park and lieu fees, and I don't like that idea.
So just so the record is clear, Commissioner Rao, perhaps you can withdraw your motion and rescind your motion and then make a new one, and then Chair Sharp can second it, because right now the pending motion is seconded by the chair.
I see. So I would rescind the original motion. I would make a new motion that moves the staff recommendation with the following amendments. We will not waive the park in lieu fee. As a second condition of approval, the hours of operation for trucks shall be limited to not operate during 7:30 to 9:30 and 2 to 4 p.m. as per the Mooney Code for the streets surrounding the project, namely Linda Vista Drive, Highnesport, Bub, and McClellan. And there was one more. And a consideration to include privacy shrubs if the applicant and the residents find that to be amenable. Those are the three conditions. Commissioner Scharf, do you approve? Or do you second?
Sure, I'll second it.
Vice Chair Scharf, I'm sorry.
Yes, I still second it.
Can I ask a clarifying question? So to the developer, what are your thoughts on if we don't approve the waiver of the in-lieu park fees up to $370,000 for the trail access?
Yeah, we would not be building that trail. That's not part of the project.
Can you speak in the mic, please?
Yeah, we would not be building that trail if the city does not want to pay for the construction of it. There's a good portion of our company that believes that trail is non-beneficial to the project for the amount of people that are going to be going in and out of the project. So they would prefer not to have it. But I stood here and said we want to be neutral because we want to provide what planning commissioners and council members would want to have for their city, but we would not want to bear the expense of that trail because we don't believe that's beneficial for the project.
Through the chair, I have a little experience in this space in that in the neighborhood I'm in, we have a trail that egresses through my neighborhood. And we have had a number of burglaries where burglars will ingress and egress through those exit points. And that's been a source of constant nuisance for the neighborhood. And so just want to point out that these routes can be pathways for burglars to get in and out, just a public safety aspect to consider as well. Thank you.
It's public safety, and it does become a nuisance for that neighborhood. So again, we don't want to build it, but we're just trying to be accommodating. We certainly couldn't build it with the project as proposed and pay for it.
So will there be a fence that prevents access to the trail from?
Yeah, there's our plans. So there's an exhibit for the trail, which is separate from our plans, but our plans shows a continuous open view fencing at the back of the project.
I see.
Yeah. Okay. It seems like it's the same as the
so I'll just
Fontana
point.
site, right?
Sorry?
I think we had the same discussion on that one, yeah.
Sorry, what was that?
I was just saying that I believe we had the same discussion on the Fontana project.
Oh.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to point out a couple of things. One is the residents of Cupertino over and over and over again keep saying that connectivity to trails is really important to them. That's one of the highest points of agreement in all the city surveys that are done. If you look at the best practices for city planning, having access to nature within a 5-minute walk is considered optimal in city planning. It's the 330-300 rule. So having access to nature within 300 meters, which is about a 5-minute walk. I do think this would be beneficial to the neighborhood, especially since this would be public access. So I am a strong supporter of this. And I think this is something we should invest in because we're not going to get the chance to do this again. So it's and if it's at cost, it seems like and I've spent a lot of time looking at trail costs. I know this is a very reasonable cost as it goes. So I would suggest a friendly amendment to include the trail in the motion.
Through the chair, I would not be able to accept that for the reasons of public safety, but also the fact that the city is facing fiscal constraints and a waiver of park in lieu fees is significant at this point. Finally, the public has access to the trail through Linda Vista Park, I believe, as well as ample access to parkland through Linda Vista Park. So I really am hesitant for all of those reasons, and particularly public safety, because I think we ought to be very conscious of, these new developments tend to be more prone to burglaries. They look at people that are newly moved in as sort of less on the guard, and it's just a lot of cases where new projects tend to get burglarized, or the homes around new projects get burglarized. So this isn't just the Everledge Court project itself, but the homes on Linda Vista Drive need to maintain public safety, and we just want to keep public safety in mind. So I would not accept that. Thank you.
So I'll just point out that the homes along all the trails in the city have no safety issues, that there's no data to show that there's been any increase in burglaries or any kind of safety issues along Regner Creek Trail, for example, which is the highest traffic trail in the city. So I don't think there's any data to back up the safety issue.
So Commissioner Linskog, may I suggest perhaps you want to make a substitute motion?
Okay, I'll make a substitute motion to accept the staff. Basically everything Commissioner Rao said, but also include the trail.
I'll second that.
All right, did we have any further comments from Commission? I will go ahead and comment. From my end, I thank the community for coming tonight. I think you have every right to be frustrated about this. The applicant knows how many times I've asked how this project could be redone, and it's very disappointing to me that we were not able to give more setback or lower buildings. And I take the decisions that we make here in Planning Commission very seriously, and in order to be able to reject a setback waiver, I have to be able to prove that it is detrimental to public safety or public health somehow. And while I could technically just reject something and send it to council without giving them, any good reason, I'm just putting the burden of proof on them. And so it's just very difficult for me to make I have no findings showing that we're hurting public health at the moment. And so, but it is disappointing. I think I fully agree this doesn't fit with the neighborhood. The zoning does not fit. It should not have been R3. And, the commissioners that sit here, there's little we could have done about it. So, I think we're in the difficult place of having no legal choice. We have done our best to answer the questions that have come to us, and the answers consistently seem to be that everything is in compliance with fire, and city is deferring to the fire department to make the rulings that they do think that this development is defensible in the event of a fire. And as we are not fire experts, we must also defer to that ruling. So I have disappointment, but this is where I'm at. Thank you. Commissioner Rao.
So through the chair, we are now voting on a substitute motion that a yes vote would waive park in lieu fees, and a no vote would fail the substitute motion. Effectively, we would go back to the original motion on the table. Thank you.
Are we ready to vote, or are there any further comments?
This is just on this particular amendment, right?
Yes.
I mean, I have summary comment as well.
Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead with that. Yeah, okay. I think that coming into this, it was clear that whether the fire issues are addressed whether the fire issues were going to be addressed appropriately. I feel comfortable that they have been to the standards to which you can ask, the community can hold you to resolve this issue. I think that there's been thought in the design, with regard to the setback issue, there's been thought to design about how the frosted windows and the direction that they face kind of addresses the problem of people staring into other people's homes. I think it didn't address the height that the people on the south side would see. So I would encourage you to just try to be creative there, short of necessarily taking a floor out. Is there a way you can modify the profile of the building so that it doesn't seem as tall on that side? I think that's the only place where that's an issue, where there's a very short setback. One area I was surprised to. There was one mention about the school districts. There was one mention in there about about some of the revenues that would come to the schools, and I think that's good. I was a very active parent. My son went to Regnart, which would not be in this zone. I think this particular kids who were living here at that time would have went to Lincoln, but went to Regnart, Kennedy, and Monte Vista. Regnart is closed because nobody can afford to live in our community anymore that has kids. And, I think that this actually helps. At the time, there was relatively new, when he was young, there was a relatively new developmental project at Murano. It's more toward the center, right off Danza Boulevard. But actually, I remember spending a lot of time going there with, to visit with his, to take him over to visit with his friends. I think that there's a very good chance that your place will be like that for this part of the community, and I think that is something that's a plus, and something not to forget. That's one way to support the schools is by making an environment where it's more possible for there to be families. I think that this actually addresses that pretty well. I would actually say, though, please reach out. I think in my earlier term on the Planning Commission, it would have been unusual for somebody not to talk about, their discussions that they'd had with the districts. I would encourage you to reach out to them to understand the ways that, are there things that may not cost you anything that actually help the way that the schools operate. The fact that a project like this could be built is actually a windfall. Because the way Prop 13 works, this will really be a huge windfall for the district. So, that may be sufficient for, that we'd be thankful for that. There were, of course, a lot of discussions when people were building apartments. That's not your business, but when people were building apartments, whether they would be paying parcel taxes. And, this automatically kind of solves that problem. So I think there's a lot of pluses, a lot of community pluses. The fact that these are new places, that they'll be efficient and safe. I think those are all all pluses, and so I'm supportive of the project. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Are any more comments? Are we ready?
Can the chair clarify again what the yes vote would mean and the no vote?
So I believe we're voting on your substitute motion, correct? So yes, the yes vote would mean that you would want the only difference between that and your motion, which...
So a yes vote would waive park in lieu fees?
Yes, would have the trail connection, but would also include the hours of restriction for construction from 7:30 to 9:30 and 2 to 4 p.m., right?
That is in both motions.
That's in both motions?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So the only difference is we are voting on a motion that waives park in lieu fees.
Right, and the privacy hedges would also still be included.
Everything else is the same. Are we voting?
Are we voting? The motion carries with Commissioner Rao and Vice Chair Scharf voting no.
All right, thank you very much. We will now move on to, do we have any old business or new business? None? Any staff and commission reports?
Staff does not have any report other than to say the next meeting will be on March 9th. If there's any members of the public that normally attend, that is on a Monday. There is a Planning Commission Academy that most of the commissioners are going to, so that date was moved, and we will be discussing the annual general plan update that goes to Sacramento on April 1st. So this is more informational, but that item will be going. And now I am blanking on the second item that we have.
What about the housing element inventory, the no net loss makeup?
That is not going. That is going to City Council next week, though, on the 3rd.
So it would not come to Planning Commission?
We are planning to come to Planning Commission on that. We just don't have a date certain on that yet.
And any update on Harvest Properties hearing?
Harvest Properties should be coming to the subsequent meeting on March 24th.
And I understand Eden Properties or Eden Housing, is that Eden? That is doing the teacher housing?
Eden is doing the teacher housing site just north of Valco. They volunteered to do a study session for the City Council, even though the permit for that project will only come to the Planning Commission as the final decision-making body, because it is, I don't know if it's 100%, I believe it is 100% affordable to different income categories.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Any future agenda setting? No? Then the meeting is adjourned.